just a layup. Temptation couldn't even phase him. 40 days and nights and still proclaiming the kingdom. Back by the king of kings, little loves. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, oh love. Faith, 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 faith. It ain't even close, oh love. Faith, 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 favor. Tiptoeing with this faith of mine. Big stepper, yeah, yeah. Big stepper, big stepper, yeah. Back by the king of kings, little loves. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. It ain't even close, oh Lord. It ain't even close. All praise to the Most High. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. No.
If we start from the premise that the status quo is unacceptable, then that means we're going to have to bring about some serious changes. Our top priority has to be to control costs. And I've said very clearly, if any bill arrives from Congress that is not controlling costs, that's not a bill I can support.
We had the inauguration last week. I remember 4 years ago, there was this real theme of FDR and the Great Depression. Paul Krugman calling for the New Deal. Everyone talking about Obama as the new FDR. Time magazine ran a cover where they had actually photoshopped Obama to look like FDR.
The single most important part of this economic recovery and reinvestment plan is the fact that it will save or create up to 4 million jobs. With the private sector so weakened by this recession, the federal government is the only entity left with the resources to jolt our economy back into life. FDR once said, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." In order to get stuff done, we're going to compromise. This is why FDR, when he started Social Security, it only affected widows and orphans. You did not qualify. And yet now it is something that really helps a lot of people. When Medicare was started, it was a small program. It grew. Under the criteria that you just set out, each of those were betrayals. FDR, President Roosevelt, realized he would need to form a new partnership with business if we were going to become what he would later call the arsenal of democracy. And as you can imagine, the relationship between the president and business leaders during the course of the Depression had been rocky at times, had grown somewhat fractured by the New Deal. So Roosevelt reached out to businesses, and business leaders answered the call to serve their country.
Do you think that you risk losing some credibility or even talking down the economy by using dire language like that?
No. I think that what I've said is what other economists have said across the political spectrum. We are going through the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. There have been criticisms from a bunch of different directions about this bill. Some of the criticisms really are with the basic idea that government should intervene at all in this moment of crisis. I mean, you have some people, very sincere, who philosophically just think that government has no business interfering in the marketplace. And in fact, there are several who suggested that FDR was wrong to intervene back in the New Deal. They're fighting battles that I thought were resolved a pretty long time ago.
In these rooms, FDR's made decisions that had impacts around the world. Once your term's up, you're going to be a citizen once again. And that, I think, is both humbling, but extremely gratifying, because those who come into this office are here temporarily, and someday soon there's going to be somebody else who takes up that mantle, and you just make sure that during the time that you're here, you're doing the best you can to serve the people who sent you.
I can say with confidence, there has never been a man or a woman, not me, not Bill, nobody, more qualified than Hillary Clinton to serve as President of the United States of America.
President Obama saved our country from a second Great Depression. We can't let Barack Obama's legacy fall into the hands of someone who doesn't understand that.
Fact is, though, at this point, my legacy is finally beginning to take shape. The economy is getting better. 9 in 10 Americans now have health coverage. Today, thanks to Obamacare, you no longer have to worry about losing your insurance if you lose your job. President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.
His healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Andrew Yang.
To talk more about President Obama's legacy, we're joined by Eddie Glaude, also with us, Michael Eric Dyson. He wrote a cover article for the New Republic titled, "Yes, She Can, Why Hillary Clinton Will Do More for Black People Than Obama." Well, let's start with you, Professor Dyson, on this issue of why Hillary Clinton, you say, will do more for African Americans than President Obama.
I think in the aggregate, when we look at the degree to which she is capable, because of that very white privilege, to speak about race in a way that Obama, even if he chose to be more forthcoming, would be categorized and put in a black box in a certain way, that she has both the drive, the intelligence, the ability, and the privilege to speak about it in a way that he is perhaps not only disinclined to do so, but maybe restricted in his own mind.
Biden, undoubtedly coached by Obama, has officially placed preserving Obama's legacy and their ideological project over defeating the man they claim to be a civilization-ending threat. Obama picked Hillary. Obama cleared the path for Biden.
That's right.
He moved all those chess pieces, got Pete to drop out, all of that, so that Biden could win in South Carolina and go on. And I very strongly suspect that his hand is behind picking who will be Biden's successor, Kamala Harris. So this should all be viewed as a project of basically securing that Obama legacy and that neoliberal project for as long as they can possibly hold on to it.
And they want to put their hands all the way through the future and control it forever.
Hillary Clinton is a corporate Democrat. She is committed to a neoliberal economic philosophy.
What is neoliberal philosophy?
Well, a neoliberal economic philosophy involves a kind of understanding that the notion of the public good is kind of undermined by a basic market logic that turns us all into entrepreneurs, where competition and rivalry define who we are, where the state's principal function, right, is to secure the efficient functioning of the economy and the defense, and creating the market conditions whereby you and I can pursue our own self-interest. And part of what that does, if we only read it as an economic philosophy and not understand it as a kind of political rationality, producing particular kinds of subjects who are selfish, who are self-interested, who are always in competition with one another, then we lose sight of how neoliberalism attacks the political imagination. So the interesting question that I ask of Hillary Clinton is that will she fundamentally change the circumstances that are at the heart of the problem facing this country? In fact, I think she's illustrative of the problem confronting the country.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, I agree with your analysis of neoliberalism.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Barack Obama writing on X, bad debate nights happen. Trust me, I know. But this election is still a choice between someone who has fought for ordinary folks his entire life and someone who only cares about himself, between someone who tells the truth, who knows right from wrong and will give it to the American people straight, and someone who lies through his teeth for his own benefit. Last night didn't change that, and it's why so much is at stake in November. Doesn't it become Barack Obama's legacy if Joe Biden loses to Donald Trump?
Yeah, so there's no question that Obama has come in here to make sure that they put duct tape on the holes in the ship.
Regardless of what happens, I've run my last campaign, and I'm beginning to think about my legacy. Some of you know Mayor Rahm Emanuel recently announced he's naming a high school after me in Chicago, which is extremely humbling.
You have to recognize that a global superpower like the U.S. has the influence, has the reach, the resources, and it produces quite a number of significant role players. Obama being the first black president in the U.S., it's quite significant at the time when the demon of racism seemed to be rising, when issues of ethno-nationalism seem to be up now, especially under the pressure of immigration.
We're speaking about a legacy today, and his predecessor, the person coming after him, is undoing his legacy back home. What are your thoughts about the political situation in the United States in terms of Barack Obama's legacy?
Superpowers have risen and fallen. Empires have risen and fallen. The isolationism that you are seeing now under President Donald Trump may actually lead to the decline and the ultimate isolation of the U.S. And the populism in the politics of today, not only in the U.S. but across the world, is one of the most dangerous things, because we saw that in the 30s, it produced Nazism.
There is another candidate whose defining principle, the central theme of his candidacy, is opposition to all that we've done. If you care about our legacy, realize everything we stand for is at stake. All the progress we've made is at stake in this election. My name may not be on the ballot, but our progress is on the ballot. I will consider it a personal insult, an insult to my legacy, if this community lets down its guard and fails to activate itself in this election. You want to give me a good send-off? Go vote.
For some reason, I don't think it's going to be Gavin. I think they need somebody black. I honestly do.
Big Mike?
Huh?
You think Big Mike?
I still put my money on Michelle. I think she's going to be like, well, I had to come out. I couldn't let my country go. I couldn't blah, 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 blah. I hope I am wrong, because I think that is the only person that could legitimately beat Donald Trump. I don't think
he's in trouble. If Big Mike, listen, if Big Mike runs, if that muscular back gets on that stage, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough.
I know.
You don't think so?
I don't see it at all. I see like uber liberals getting behind Michelle Obama. I just don't see a lot of your average, ordinary Americans getting behind her like that. I just don't see it. I could be wrong. I'm prepared to be wrong.
Even with the endorsement of Barack, like even with her husband, think about it now. She gonna have Barack.
I don't think Michelle is going to throw her hat in the ring as far as the DNC convention is concerned. And the reason why is because it will be too much of a gamble for them to do that. To your guys' point, the Obamas are trying to preserve their legacy, are trying to preserve Barack's legacy. And it will be a huge wound to their ego and to their legacy if Michelle is the nominee and she ends up losing to Trump. That will be a huge blow to their ego, and that will be a huge blow to Barack Obama's legacy personally. So for that reason, I don't think that's too much of a risk, too much of a gamble, unless they still the next election again. I just don't see them. I think that their legacy means too much to them to put Michelle up.
With just 6 months left as America's first lady, Michelle Obama returned to the campaign trail where she fought hard for the Democratic frontrunner, Hillary Clinton.
And one of the messages that she delivered on behalf of Hillary Clinton to these audiences was that if you don't vote for her, you're voting to elect Donald Trump.
It has shaken me to my core in a way that I couldn't have predicted.
The polls had Hillary as a shoo-in to become the nation's 45th president.
Another major headline from...
But on election night, a very different outcome took shape.
Let's be frank, we all got it wrong.
Trump won 42% of the female vote. After the stunning upset, Michelle spoke candidly during a televised interview with Oprah Winfrey.
Now we're feeling what not having hope feels like.
Michelle Obama said yesterday that there's no hope, but I assume she was talking about the past, not the future.
Her willingness to speak her mind prompted an outcry for Michelle Obama to run for president herself in 2020.
To many Democrats in the 2016 campaign, she was the moral voice of the party.
When they go low, we go high.
As Michelle Obama's time in the White House came to a close in 2016, she delivered her last speech to some of her most loyal supporters.
I can think of no better way to end my time as First Lady than celebrating with all of you. So I want to close today by simply saying thank you. Being your First Lady has been the greatest honor of my life, and I hope I've made you proud.
The episode of Cutting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. I am one of your hosts, Quisha King. So I got a little bit of a different situation going on. Hopefully my mic is good. Does my mic sound nice? Let me know. I'm noticing a little difference that we color and some stuff. It just looks kind of funny, but we're just gonna rock with it. It's been a lot, but okay. So my thoughts. First of all, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. That you spent good quality time with your family, your friends, and ate some good food. And got to get ready to work all that stuff off. Your mic sounds nice. Check. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Willie. Is Obama's legacy over? I am like, yes, for now. Politically, yes, but ideologically, I don't think it's over. But certainly, that demon has been wounded and pushed back. that's my thoughts on it. Just a lot of thoughts of the montage. I was thinking about the arrogance of the Obamas. You know, how dare you send me if you send me off and you don't vote? That's not the good way to send me. I'm just arrogant. Twitter. I think Twitter really opened up the world to get another narrative of the Obamas, to see what other people were seeing and thinking and things like that. So I think Twitter was really, really helpful in Americans seeing, like, okay, what's really going on. And of course, we have the trans issue. The trans issue is and was one of the major issues that swing state voters and independents, I believe, pushed them to the polls. We see that Trump spent a lot of money on that one campaign. I don't know if you guys have seen it, where he's like, Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump's for you. It was really good, very effective. They played that sucker over and over and over. And it was funny, and it was true, So I have quite a bit of nuanced thoughts on this. Of course, y'all know I'm always a little bit nuanced, but I want to hear what my friend Cheecham Chuck has to say about this. I feel like his perspective is going to be quite interesting. Let's see. Hello, Mr. Littleton. How are you?
What up, Doug? I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I went to a football game today.
Yeah.
I almost sound like Hakeem. I went to a football game and there was
the football contest on television last night. The most exhilarating victory.
Yes.
The Packers of Green Bay triumphed over the Giants of New York by kicking an oblong ball made of pigskin to a big H.
Yes,
It was the most ripping victory.
Exactly.
I did finish watching my movie that I started, which was Lean on Me, watching it for the upteenth time, and I finally did see when Mr. Clark was dragging Sam's and drug him into the music room and slammed him against the piano, and he said, "Don't."
That part, you gotta rewind or repeat.
I said, that's the part Quisha was talking about. I was cracking up.
Yeah.
So I see what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Obama needs a little bit of Mr. Clark right now. Obama could use some Mr. Clark. What are your thoughts on Obama, his legacy?
Well, like you said, he's been wounded. Progressivism has been severely halted. Progressivism was severely halted in 2016, actually. We know what happened in 2020. I don't need to unpack that again right now, at least. But yeah, the American people said no more, because that's not what they signed up for. They signed up for hope and change. They signed up for optimism and so on and so forth. I remember in the lead up to the 2008 election, voters were polled. And I think this still seems to be the case. When people are asked if they are more conservative or more liberal, how would they identify? I think the majority of Americans consider themselves to be conservative. I know that was the case back in 2008, but there was still this large popular mandate for the hope and change agenda that Obama was bringing in that year. So it seems to be a bit off to me in terms of how the people viewed themselves in comparison to how they viewed him. Now, we should have known. I would argue we should have known who Obama was when he rose to power out of nowhere. He was handpicked, hand selected in the state of Illinois by the corrupt political machine in the city of Chicago, the actual birthplace of the American Communist Party, going all the way back to the year 1919. There was, of course, a political coronation of Barack Obama in the living room of Bernardine Doors and Bill Ayers. This was, I'm not speaking figuratively, it just literally happened. It was even reported in some mainstream news outlets. He was handpicked by the state senator there. Her name at the moment escapes me. I'm embarrassed to say. I think that the people said, enough of Obama. At the time, remember the idea was that, well, America was in decline, and it was the job of someone like Barack Obama to manage that decline. Remember, that was the phrase, to manage the decline. And you had a lot of those who were politically opposed to the Obama agenda saying, no, man, you have to you have to do something about this. Mm-hmm. And Obama just, he sat on his hands, because that's literally what he wants to do. That is the anti-colonial agenda of Barack Obama, right? Those were the dreams of his father, quote unquote, is to reestablish, to create some kind of parity or symmetry, if you will, between the United States and the other failing nations. It was as if the United States owed the world something. And the people's, after 8 years of that nonsense, the people, they rejected it. Remember, the question Obama had was, what magic wand do you have? As if there is no solution, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny that, the FDR is becoming like a consistent theme around these parts over the past month or so, since Chad and I did that short doc. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to just touch on something very quickly. When Obama says that there was a partnership between FDR and the business sector or the private sector, that's not true at all. It wasn't so much a partnership as it was a complete takeover. As a matter of fact, so many businesses were just completely fed up with the FDR administration. By the year 1936, they put together a coalition of businessmen, powerful businessmen in the country, to try to oust FDR, called the Liberty League. You can look into that. Even our very own Henry Ford criticized FDR's policies as being communist, even making a kind of offhanded remark stating that this is the United States, not the Soviet Union. And so, and that was, someone as powerful as Henry Ford, who I think at the time was like the third richest man in the country. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. You talked about the neoliberal agenda. Like I said, there's two separate segments from, in my humble opinion, in terms of when, liberalism kind of made these certain shifts. I look at the first shift in liberalism, or the one, I guess, preceding the 1974 midterm election, which is what I consider to be this kind of wedding between the mainstream of the Democratic Party and the radical Marxist campus left. But prior to that, you saw another shift in the left at the end of World War II, which is, again, something that Chad and I talked about with his new embrace of human rights. Of course, to quote the great scholar James Lindsay, that every woke term conceals an agenda. That's a quote of James Lindsay. So when they say such things as human rights or equality in these things, all of these woke terms, diversity, equity, and inclusion, every woke term conceals an agenda. And so
it's just like the devil, it's like you can't tell the truth. All they can do is lie. Like even when they speak reproductive rights, it's a lie.
Yeah. So I was thinking a lot of different things in the way Obama used the Maoist line of Marxism in order to implement or push forward the transgenderism agenda. And so, I'll speak more on that as the conversation goes on, but I'll let you bring in my buddies, see what they got on this.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up our resident comedian here, Mr. Blanche Robinson. Y'all just wait. Just wait. Hello. So you must be in your backsliding days. Are you backsliding?
Yeah. You see my hat.
Make racism wrong again.
Exactly.
Make racism wrong. Oh my goodness.
Hat cost $30 too. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting to piggyback on what Chuck said about this FDR, correlation between him and Obama. And Obama made a comment where he said that this was the greatest economic since the Depression. So I guess Obama came in as a savior, similar to FDR. And I thought about FDR serving 4 terms. And technically, this would have been Obama's 4th term if Kamala would have won. So do I think, I agree with you, Quisha, the dragon is wounded, but do I think the dragon is dead? No, this is not like Smaug from The Hobbit. This dragon is still breathing. But I don't know, I just think it's funny that Obama had us all, not all of us, but a lot of us bliggities back in the day, had us all fooled. If you go back and listen to Obama, though, he sounds a lot more conservative. He sounded a lot more conservative back then than he does now, especially when he was talking to black people. Like, he was basically like, no excuses with black people. And it seemed like all that whole narrative shifted. I think, what's his name? Tavis Smiley, and had talked about that, and Jesse Jackson, when he said he wanted to, cut his testicles off. He was basically saying that because of how he was talking down to black people. But it's funny that Obama started out to get in office. To me, he had to play that card to get in. And that goes back to Chuck's point, when Americans were polled about them being conservative, then it makes sense because he pretty much ran as a moderate Democrat, conservative, almost, if it's a term, conservative Democrat, that's how he ran. And so that's what got him the votes. He was a quote unquote safe choice as a candidate. But anyway, yeah, I'm ready to get into this. Who was it? Newsweek that said Obama was the first gay president. So, this is, I don't know. I think it was some truth to that.
Yeah. I'll ask you, and then I'd like to hear what Chad has to say on this too. Because Chuck said something to the effect of, we should have seen him coming. Do you think that Americans should have seen Barack Obama coming a mile away?
Should have?
Should have.
Yes. The likelihood, no. No. Is no. You would have to, I don't know. To me, the folks that saw Obama coming were either black folks that were just so pessimistic to where anybody black in a position was going to be a problem. And then you had folks that actually saw, you know, how he came up, what he was actually saying. Like, I mean, the average person wouldn't have been able to connect these dots like y'all did. It just wasn't going to happen. Even listening to him now, connecting these dots, like he was saying so much stuff that should have been like alarms going off, but the average person, they were enamored with his charm, with the way he spoke, easy on the eyes. He had Big Mike as his wife, so that made him, you know,
extra black,
but also not pretentious. Like he wanted a normal woman. He didn't go after a fine woman, so it kind of made him seem like a very normal, down to earth type of guy. And so all that played in his favor. There was a masterful. Who was the guy, Chuck, that he bit his whole swag from? It was some guy. It was another politician, and it was also an actor, but it was another politician as well.
Well, I recall, I know Alan Keyes, he was destroyed in debate against the black conservative Alan Keyes. But I know that, Barack Obama, when he ran, I think, for a House seat in the state of Illinois against Bobby Rush, former Black Panther, Bobby Rush, and Bobby Rush just annihilated him, because he was able to successfully paint Obama as this moderate, Bobby Rush being the radical, with the Black Panther background, and so his bona fides were well intact. And Barack Obama, remember, he famously said that if he doesn't get elected, it won't be because he's black; it'll just be because he was unable to articulate an agenda that the American people could get on board with. Right? That him losing would have nothing to do with his race. Right? So he downplayed his race, and then when he began to take his political licks, then all of a sudden, he couldn't stop talking about race, right, in order to kind of save his own political legacy. But to your question, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. I think you might be talking about Alan Keyes, or it could be Bobby Rush.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but
it wasn't Bobby Rush. It was another light-skinned guy. I just don't
Harry
know.
Lennox.
Oh, okay.
What's his name?
Harry Lennox. Somebody, Celeste Codes 930 said that in the chat. I'm gonna while you guys are looking for that, I'm gonna bring up our fearless leader here, Mr. Chad O. Jackson. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I want to ask you also, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. We went to my in-laws' house, and then we went to some friends' house after and played like board games and stuff. So it was a good Thanksgiving. Yeah.
That's fun. Should we have seen Obama coming? And then, obviously we want to hear your thoughts on his legacy being over or not.
So should we have seen Obama coming in terms of pre-2008, or what do you mean exactly?
So I think, what I got from Chuck was like when he started to speak, like when he started to articulate his positions, like could Americans have been like, what the heck? Like, what did that man say? That's what I got.
Yeah, what I'm saying, Quisha, I think they should have known that he was a radical. But they were put to sleep.
In light of such stratagems and books like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, or some of the work that Bill Ayers was doing in the realm of education, or some of the work that Eric Mann was doing in terms of community organizing there in LA, what the so-called progressives, the Marxists, figured out is that if they are going to achieve their goals here in the United States, then it has to be by playing the game from within. And so as far as like the production of a polished politician who harbors Marxist ideology, but is willing to look the part and play the game and be strategic so as to win the victory, I think to that extent, yes, we should have seen someone like an Obama coming. But the fact is, to the point that you made earlier, his time is kind of running out. His clock is running out. And the reason why in the montage I make several references to FDR, well, I use Obama clips of him making references to FDR, is because he likened himself to FDR leading up to 2008. When you read, for example, his book, The Audacity of Hope, which was released in 2006, he makes 19 references to FDR and talks about how, FDR was a trailblazer in his own right. He pushed genuine progressive policies up against the pushback of businessmen and nationalists who were accusing him of being a socialist, but he pushed through because he knew that what he was doing was right. So he lauds and praises FDR for this reason, and he's painting himself as a FDR type candidate leading up to 2008, and he's not doing this by himself. He's doing it with the help of the mainstream media. You see Time Magazine morphing an image of FDR and Barack Obama on the cover of their magazine. You see a lot of economists, a lot of political pundits who are saying on the 2008 campaign trail, yeah, this feels like FDR. This feels like the New Deal, they called it. And so as someone who is a student of history, as Barack Obama likes to think of himself, FDR is one of his political heroes, and he wanted for the history books, to treat him in the same fashion as they treated FDR. The problem with that is it relies too heavily on the so-called leaders of the cultural hegemony, the leaders of the institutions, that is academia, education, media, entertainment, law, so on and so forth, in order to push that narrative. The difference between FDR's day back then and our day today is that the media is more decentralized today than it was back in those days, where all you had as a mode of communication was the radio. Television wasn't yet invented. And what FDR was able to do, in the same vein as his uncle, Teddy Roosevelt, was able to do, was master the media in terms of having cameras follow him around and making him look larger than life. And so they were able to push out propaganda and utilize propaganda in a way that was pretty much unheard of in the 19th century. And with this, they were able to put forth an image that they are bigger and better than what, they actually were. And so, when it comes to FDR, the modes of communication were limited. I was talking to Blanche last week. The fact that FDR, who was wheelchair bound, I mean, he was bound to a wheelchair, was able to tell the media, don't take pictures of me in the wheelchair. And they acquiesced to this. They listened to this. Can you imagine Trump having some kind of deficiency and telling the media, telling the press, hey, don't take pictures of this or don't take pictures? Do you think they'll listen? No. This goes to show the mastery that FDR had over the media in terms of shaping the narrative. And so, and that they did. They shaped the narrative in such a way that historians to this very day present a mythologized, fake image of what FDR was, what he actually did. They don't tell the truth about the fact that, to Chuck's point, he actually prolonged the Great Depression. He didn't stop the Great Depression. His policies actually prolonged the Great Depression. The Great Depression didn't end till he died, which says a lot. And Obama's day, on the other hand, with the emergence of internet and the kind of moving away from legacy media and paying attention instead to podcasts like this and alternative media, internet programs, there's information out there that now challenges the hegemonic narrative that's being pushed by, the powers that be, as it were. And so it's much tougher for the narrative to go out in the way that Obama wants it to go out. So he's up against a different environment, a different political landscape, a different information landscape than FDR. And so he's depending on this media narrative to paint a picture of him that is at odds with the facts. And what the election of Trump was able to do, and this is my last point, in 2016, as well as 2024, was it was able to defy in real time the narrative that Obama was this great president, right? The historians are going to tell our children's children that Obama was fantastic. He was great. He was this, that, and the third. That narrative is going to be at odds with the real people who lived in real time, who gave an outright repudiation of Obama's vision and of Obama's so-called legacy by the voting of Donald John Trump, who stood opposed to what Obama was and what he represented. And I would argue that it wasn't just 2016 and 2024. I would argue that it was also 2020, because those numbers, 81 million votes for Joe Biden, are too dubious to take seriously. And I wrote about this in an op-ed that's going to be released maybe in the next week or two. But I mean, I think the winning of Donald Trump in this previous election, it's a winning of a battle, but it's not necessarily the winning of the war. The winning of the war would require to take hold of the institutions that push forth narratives that tells us that people like FDR and Barack Obama were great presidents.
Yeah, Chad.
I find this is like a track that you've been on, Chad. This is kind of like what you're doing with the MLK thing. So like all throughout the history books, we're like, oh, MLK, he's so great and wonderful, and he was this, Christian man and reverend and all this stuff. And it's kind of like, our show and other people who are, in this fight, I guess, call it that. We're trying to correct the record in real time, for this, because we didn't do it, back with MLK and people like that. But what were we going to say?
No, I was going to say, I was funny as I was listening to Chad speak, the light bulb was going off in my head, because I wanted to speak just about the media and how the media covered FDR. And Chad mentioned something that I was going to say, which of course was the fact that the media, they were forbidden from publishing any images of FDR in a wheelchair. And again, like Chad mentioned, they acquiesced. I mean, you couldn't imagine the symbolism of seeing a president who can't walk. Because it's hard to even imagine a time when, a lot of Americans, they may have known who the president's name was, but a lot of people went their entire lifetimes and never even saw an actual image of the president. Someone could be president, and a lot of Americans wouldn't even have known what the president looked like. It's kind of hard to imagine that in our day and age, but that was the truth. As a matter of fact, very few people had even heard presidents speak before. Oftentimes, when there was a dispute over what was said, for example, when a president would make a speech, since it may not have been broadcast on the radio, or it may not have, of course, you didn't see it on television. A lot of folks who were there would have to sign affidavits attesting to what they heard. This was, one of the controversial moments in FDR's political life, of course, when he lied about writing Haiti's constitution. He went on to say he didn't say it, but hundreds of people who were there made a sworn statement claiming that they did hear him say it. Because the media, they absolutely loved and adored him. FDR lost his ability to walk in the early 20s. He couldn't walk. This was long before he became president. He couldn't walk. But he knew, of course, the symbolism and what that would convey if you have a commander in chief who's bound to a wheelchair. And it was just, he had the media wrapped around his finger, so much so that there were a couple of just outrageous examples. There was one reporter reporting for the Chicago Tribune. I think his name was John Bediger. He actually divorced his wife. He divorced his wife just so he can marry one of FDR's daughters. That's how much he loved him and loved his family. There was another female reporter. She was, famous for her day during that time. She was arguably the most famous female reporter in the country. Her name was Lorena Hickok. She was working for the Associated Press. I almost said the Associated Depressed. The Associated Press. As their lead reporter. I think she was the highest paid female reporter in the country, and she quit her job just so she can move into the White House. during the days of FDR. So you had a lot of media sycophants who just, I mean, they loved him. They loved Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They loved him. And fast forward to Obama, you know, Obama got similar treatment even when he even when he abused the press. You know, that's what's so funny and so strange. Well, it's not strange. I mean, it's like, duh, here in this space, we know what time it is with these people. The projection and throwing of stones and hiding one's hands. The way they say that Trump, you know, attacks the press by, you know, calling them liars or calling them, you know, fake news, right? I mean, that's what people have pretty much made careers out of on social media, is criticizing journalists or journalism, criticizing news coverage. Blanche does it, you know, we all do it. We criticize media coverage. You know, Trump gets up there and he pretty much speaks his mind the same way in which we would do if we were given that platform. And he's, you know, he's being castigated as someone who's trying to attack the press. But Obama literally attacked the press, the New York Times, Washington Post. It was even reported at the time the things that he was doing, you know, sicking the IRS on folks in the media and using the power of government to try and attack those who are willing to, you know, get to the truth of many of Obama's scandals, right? You hear this cliche or this phrase too, that Barack Obama's presidency, you know, his presidencies were scandal free. His presidency, his 2 terms were scandal free, which is the biggest lie, the biggest lie. But yeah, to Chad's point though, and I just wanted to add some detail to put it in perspective, just to show you the level of media manipulation that was going on back then. I mean, from that to even, you know, talk about 2020 and the stealing of an election. You know, FDR, for example, back in the 1930s, he was using his pay-to-play programs through his public works administration to steal elections. He was doing this, and many people knew that he was doing it. Probably the most famous voter fraud, election fraud scandal involving the Democrat Party happened. I forgot what, I think it was the 1938 election. This was known as the Great Tom Pendergast a voter fraud scandal. He was head of the Democrat Party in the state of Missouri, and he was one of FDR's little henchmen. And the amount of voter fraud that was taking place in the state of Missouri was so catastrophic. It was so tremendous that, you know, the national media couldn't ignore it. And so they were stealing elections back in the 1930s. So to say they wouldn't be doing it now is just preposterous. But anyway,
Right.
I'm ranting.
Now, you know, the media, sometimes I don't feel like people really understand just how powerful the media is and why it is so it's such a slap in the face, I guess, when we see them lying, when we see so-called journalists lying to our face. They're literally supposed to be the ones who have the insight, you know, who are sitting in these rooms and reporting back to the American people what is going on, speaking truth to power. Like, that's what they're supposed to be doing, holding these people accountable, working on the behalf of American citizens. But I guess if I've thought about this before, like when you have a company, when you have a for-profit company like a CNN or MSNBC or whatever, and their profit motive, their profit incentive, they're incentivized to lean more towards the government, to be a little more easy on the government. Like, how is that supposed, like, eventually I feel like as a business, they're going to just kind of go that way anyway. I don't know. What do y'all think about that part of it? The media. And this is totally kind of sidetracking this conversation, but it was just a thought. When it's profitable for them to be a little more, you know, friendly with the government, like what do we say to that?
I think that, you know, the media. Oh, go ahead. I did speak last. Somebody else can go.
I already answered that
Did
question.
you hear that question?
I think yeah, I did. I think I answered it in the in my opening monologue, and I don't know if I could add too much more to that, but but you're asking about something specifically, because what I spoke to was more or less the fact that the media, which is but one institution within the cultural hegemony, basically pushing forth a narrative in people to their so-called heroes that, in a sense, coalesce or push forth a narrative or an idea that, you know, is on a quest towards something, in their case, Marxist globalism, so on and so forth. But how now that that's decentralized in a way, people, you know, organizations like CNN and ABC and NBC and others are losing sway. I think the last Gallup poll showed that only 35% of Americans trusted the media. So they've lost their sway. And in fact, you could argue that the fact that they came out so heavily against Trump in 2016 actually worked in Trump's favor, because you're telling me not to like this person and I don't like you, so I'm going to like the person you're telling me not to like. So it's one of those things where the media doesn't have as much sway as it did, say, in the 80s or 70s or so on. The media approval rating is at an all-time low. So I think that is also working against Obama's desire to have a lasting legacy. I mean, the historians are going to continue to do what the historians do, because most of them are left of center. Most of the economists are left of center, so on and so forth. And so, I mean, do the populace or do the electorate distrust the so-called expert class, or those who are responsible for giving a version of history? Do they distrust them as much as they do the media? I think that's to be determined. I know I don't really trust them, but yeah, I think when it comes to specifically to the media's tendency to push forward narratives and push forward individuals who they want to see succeed for an ideological purpose, that's probably not the question that you're asking. I think that time is running out.
You know, it's funny because the press throughout the history of the United States has gone through, you know, many different phases, right? We had the days in the 19th century of the party press. You know, back in the day, you know, members of the press would openly declare they would promote their biases, or they would tell you, okay, I am endorsing this particular politician, or I am in support of this particular agenda. Right. And that was the media's, I guess, job, or their primary modus operandi in the 19th century. This is why even to this very day, a lot of the, you know, newspaper outlets that are still in existence, you'll hear it in the title, right? You know, the Pittsburgh Democrat, or the such and such a Republic, or the so-and-so Republican, and so on and so forth, right? They would tell you. But then, and I think this was during the period of progressivism in the early 20s, when you had this idea of a kind of scientific journalism, right? This notion that we're going to be biased, we're not going to pick sides, we're not going to tell you, you know, we're not going to wear our biases on our sleeve. We're just going to objectively report the news. And journalism almost became this thing that one had to go through some sort of indoctrination process in order to cross over into the field of journalism, as opposed to just saying, hey, you know, I am a journalist. I investigate things. I write about them. Right. Sort of like, you know, what we have now. It's weird with social media. It's going full circle to what it was back in the 19th century, because you didn't have to have any kind of degree or special sort of training to be a journalist. That wasn't a thing always. And I think with this growing just with colleges and universities, and the growth of colleges and universities in the former half of the 20th century, I think a lot of journalists, you began to see them going through the same type of indoctrination processes that a lot of other folks went through, and they just kind of became this sort of mainstay of American leftism, thanks in large part to our colleges and universities, and how they've just, you know, deteriorated over the centuries. As a matter of fact, when Chad mentions, so to your question, Quisha, you know, I think it could be Because to go back to what I said moments ago, Barack Obama being a far greater threat to the press than any president in my lifetime. I think that a lot of these folks in media, they're just ideologically driven more so than anything else. I don't think perhaps we give these folks enough credit, because I think a lot of them are motivated by their conviction. They actually believe in the vision because they are themselves fellow travelers.
Right.
They believe in the ideas and the promise of this progressive utopia, this progressive future. And so they're going to sort of use the avenue of journalism to make sure that they pitch in, that they play their part, that they do their role. And lastly, when Chad mentions and he uses this term that the media is just one aspect of the cultural hegemony, this goes back to, of course, Antonio Gramsci and the very notion of critical theory, because, of course, by the early 20s, people were asking, well, how come this socialist revolution didn't occur in the highly advanced industrial nations of Western Europe and the United States? And why was it that Russia seemed to bypass the stage of advanced capitalism and go into socialism, which was against what Marx had predicted? Well, Antonio Gramsci, of course, came up with this idea that built within the framework of Western culture are these kind of natural defense mechanisms that prevented such revolutions from occurring, right? So within the West is a kind of culture or a kind of cultural hegemony that keeps the revolution at base, and it pretty much kind of makes the people sort of content. And so we need to, or the Marxists at the time came to the realization that they needed to infiltrate the institutions most responsible for what Gramsci referred to as cultural production, so that in time the Marxists could challenge the cultural hegemony of the West. And the 5 institutions responsible for that cultural production, according to Gramsci, was media, religion, journalism, media, religion, education, the family, and law.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it.
So, well, I won't go down that rabbit hole. That's kind of like my own little thing there. But I wanted to play this clip while we wait for Chad to come back. Let's see, where is he? Oh, here it is. Chad has them perfectly titled too. This is good.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump. At least I will go down as a president.
Well, as the cool kids say, that didn't age well. Do you think, who's worse, Blanche, Biden or Obama? Uh-oh.
Worse as far as what is the president?
Mm-hmm.
I have to say Obama, because Obama's legacy was alive during Biden's presidency. So I have to say Obama, because he's probably the horse, pulling the wagon. Yeah, I would say Obama's probably worse. Now, Biden, I would say Obama. I mean, Biden was horrible too. But I just feel like even when you see Biden and you see Kamala, you still see Obama. So that's what makes, to me, Obama is the guy. And even mention the media, like, if you notice, the media never had to compete before, but now they do.
Yeah.
And so now there's competition for people's attentions and people's thoughts and people's minds. You think about it, you can name all of the top news networks, right? Maybe about 5.
Yeah.
But think about how many social media sites, YouTube pages, websites. Just think, we're talking about probably a billion compared to those 5. And so you really can't compete. And if you notice, this is what made them turn up even more, was because they tried to compete with social media. If you look at Kamala's campaign, even what Barack did right there, once Donald Trump said the news is fake, he pretty much said what everybody knows.
Yeah.
But the fact that he said it is what really gave him cachet with the people, because people were like, man, this is a president saying something like this.
Right.
This is what to me turned the tide with him, because he said something a common man would say on a big stage. And so once he said that the media is fake, it kind of put a battery in content creators' backs, because now you have a president saying the news is fake. And so now you're empowering people to go out there and actually report the facts and the real news.
Yeah.
And so this came at a pivotal time with Obama, because as Trump is coming in, social media is taking off. As Obama's leaving, social media is taking off. So now you got Trump, you got all these content creators. Think about who got famous off of Trump. Candace Owens,
right.
Andrew Tate, and Officer Tatum. Just a lot of people blew up off of just riding with Trump. Not necessarily, they might have been Republicans or conservative, but just riding with Trump. They rode that wave. And you look at the networks. CNN blew up talking about Trump. MSNBC talking about, so even people that was negative. So Trump was like the media cash cow for the whole system. You were talking bad about him, talking good about him. Everybody was eating off of Trump.
Right.
Then when Trump left, now you got Biden. It ain't the same. And so now you got all these content creators. Just because Trump wasn't in office, don't mean people was blasting Biden and Harris.
Yeah.
I'm talking destroying them. I would venture to say they're probably the most publicly scrutinized administration ever, because folks was going ham on those two. And then Trump wins again, obviously. But I would just say Obama's the worst. And I would say that the competition in media is what's the driving force. And now you see, with all that propaganda they've put over the past 8 years, think about how intense they've been. Trump still got reelected. We're talking about 8 years of lies, deception, propaganda, programming, and Trump still got elected. So that means that the mainstream media, if you can't do it in 8 years, it's over. So they're going to have to figure something out, attacking free speech, censoring platforms. That's going to be their next goal, because what else can they do? And then AOC, that she wants, could you imagine AOC runs for president? Oh, my. We're talking about destroyed. Oh,
yeah. I don't think that Democrats would be so stupid to do anything like that. You never know. I hope they do. You muted yourself, Blanche.
You think Kamala was bad?
Oh.
AOC? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just no.
Yeah, she's a whole hot mess. So no, it's and I'm grateful to God. Like, I feel like, along with the media, call it the false prophet, the false prophet being pushed back, and these independent content creators on the rise, I do think that will continue. Oh, one thing I was going to say is the Obama, though, used social media heavy. He was actually like the first president to really ever use, social media like that. And it really helped him. Funny how that turned around and harmed them in the end, which, I mean, I'm grateful for. But it's just interesting how that worked, because I remember people were writing all these books and they were just praising him and, oh, he's so smart and great and wonderful because he used social media, and then turn around and it didn't work out so well for him.
But even think about this though, right? You can't really name maybe one or two moments from Obama that was actually a viral moment, right? As soon as Trump got in office, that sparked a wave of viral. Even remember the liberal lady that was crying? Oh my! Like even like from him winning the election, it was viral moment after viral. I'm talking about, it was just it took social media. So Obama, he used it, but
Trump perfected it.
I got that one moment is Jesse Jackson crying. That's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, and then remember Obama fake cried for Trayvon Martin. That could be my son. Then and after that, it pretty much was.
Yeah. It's so interesting how I mean, I think, you know, I can say we all felt the weight of, you know, the government and the media's foot on our neck, you know, trying to create, where it was like battling through mud, you know, to speak. And just especially during COVID, you know, like feeling like you couldn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, you know, literally the hand of God just started to strip away these, you know, the tentacles of the false prophet, you know, little by little. And now here we are. It's like everything is opening up. I truly believe that this is a time for believers. Y'all, whatever you're doing, get it, like do it, because I do believe that God is opening up the doors. You know, the Bible says that the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, and not just on a I don't mean just financially wealthy, but I mean just being able to speak, being able to do what you were sent here to do. So y'all, this is the time to go get it. But let's see what else piqued my interest.
I left a comment in this. They said that FDR signed an executive order 6102, which made the private ownership of gold coins and bars illegal.
Yeah, he
did.
passed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he had what was it called? The gold. He signed something in the law called the Gold Reserve Act, and you know, he did this as a means to combat those who are trying to, you know, slow down, of course, his inflationary monetary policy. So he pretty much tried to corner the gold market. He tried to use the federal government to corner the gold.
That's crazy.
The gold market. Yeah, and then they later on did the exact same thing with silver. It was called the it wasn't called the gold. It was called something, but it was the exact same thing. It just had a different name. I think it was called the Silver Purchase Act. So he tried to corner the gold market, and then he attempted to corner the silver market as well.
And why did he do this?
Yeah. You know, he wanted to keep, you know, everyone on the dollar, so as to be able to pretty much have a carte blanche control over the United States economy through his manipulation of the country's you know, monetary system. You know, through, you know, money printing and bonds and so on and so forth. This gets kind of complicated economic stuff, but yeah, he man, FDR did. Yeah, he did a lot of things, man. I can't even begin to tell you guys some of the things that he did. It'll shock you. It'll shock you.
You know, yeah, these people, I mean, a lot of these people have like they are psycho. They are. And I think, you know, sometimes we forget that. I'm like, we talk about Fauci and people like that. You know, there are such things as like mad scientists. There are crazy people that happen to be presidents or happen to be scientists or happen to have like prominent positions in the world. And you go and you start to take on or even give their ideas, their objectively bad ideas, you know, breathing room to be instilled into law. And it's like people don't realize that there are actually bad people in the world who mean them no good. Let's see. Let's go to a goodie and always favorite of ours around here.
To talk more about President Obama's legacy, we're joined by Eddie Glaude, also with us, Michael Eric Dyson. He wrote a cover article for the New Republic titled, "Yes, She Can, Why Hillary Clinton Will Do More for Black People Than Obama." Well, let's start with you, Professor Dyson, on this issue of why Hillary Clinton, you say, will do more for African Americans than President Obama.
I think in the aggregate, when we look at the degree to which she is capable, because of that very white privilege, to speak about race in a way that Obama, even if he chose to be more forthcoming, would be categorized and put in a black box in a certain way, that she has both the drive, the intelligence, the ability, and the privilege to speak about it in a way that he is perhaps not only disinclined to do so, but maybe restricted in his own mind.
Is he biracial? I
Wow,
wonder.
that's a good question. I never even looked into Dyson's parentage. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, he irks my soul. But
That's,
but what do you make of this comparison, like, you know, with Hillary and Obama, even with Biden? See, I think that Biden and Hillary are more ideologically aligned than Obama. I don't think that Biden is a lefty. I think Hillary is probably more left than Biden, but I really don't think that Joe Biden is a lefty. I think that the Democrat Party has been taken over by leftists, and so he had to be more left in order to be, you know, viable.
I agree. I agree.
But I don't think that his, you know, if you were to just ask him his thoughts on, you know, communism or you know, free market and typical, you know, think ideas, I don't think he would be aligned with those things. I think he probably would be more aligned with Trump. Honestly, he probably voted for him too, but because he seemed awfully happy when Trump won. But what do y'all think? Like, do you think? I mean, he did. Even Jill, she wore like a bright red dress to the to go vote and everything, and he was just beaming when Trump came into the Oval Office.
A peaceful transition of power.
Right. Yes. Yes. He looked a little too happy that he lost.
I mean, it's kind of for me. It's difficult to say for me. I think Biden is, to your point, Keisha. I just think he's a very self-serving politician. You know, like most of them, is because, you know, when you start to think about Biden's entire career, you know, he's just a good Democrat Party soldier. He just sort of goes with, you know, whatever. You know, when I think of Biden, the first things that come to my mind is, of course, you know, what he did as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, what he did to Clarence Thomas, what he did to Robert Bork, and so many others. I mean, he was right there alongside Ted Kennedy, the so-called Lion of the Senate, trying to undermine and sabotage Ronald Reagan's effort to collapse the Soviet Union, working with the Russians in order to undermine Reagan's campaign. I mean, again, Akeisha, you know, I don't know. I think, to your point, I think you're right. I think that Biden just simply says what he thinks he needs to say in order to remain relevant, to remain in power, right? So as to not get cannibalized by his own party. Biden knows that these things are ridiculous. I think. Well, that's to say, or assuming that Biden, you know, still has his wits about him, right? If Biden was even the man he was 10 years ago, you know, you caught him in a candid moment, he would tell you that this stuff is insane. And it's funny because I think that a lot of, you know, James Carville-like Democrats would tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But the funny part is that from the outside looking in, as you watch this kind of internal back and forth going on within the left, you're sitting back and you're wondering who's going to win. Because even someone, Chuck Schumer, I think Nancy Pelosi herself belongs in that category as well, who knows that, listen, this stuff is just, it's not, you know, or perhaps leftism isn't what it was back in the 80s or 90s. Now it has become something else. And perhaps they are, you know, conjuring that Bill Maher spirit to want to sort of pull up on the reins a little bit to slow this thing down, because it's difficult to know who exactly is going to win this battle moving forward. Because I think a lot of mainstays on the American left firmly believe that they have these people under their control. And I don't know if that's true. Now, it's difficult to know. And this is just me speaking from my own individual point of view.
Who has who under whose control?
When I say who has who under control, I'm just talking about just the just with just the government, federal, heck, even state. We talk about how when it comes to, for example, like the administrative state, right? This unofficial fourth branch of the federal government, how that is really, or I made a point to say this recently on a podcast that I was on, that the administrative state and all this talk about Donald Trump draining the swamp, or Donald Trump closing up the Department of Education, or what are we going to do now that Chevron deference has been overturned? Now, what can the administrative state do now? Because in point of fact, regardless of whatever Democrats get elected, the true heart and soul of Democrat Party political power is held within the administrative state. Now, when you think about that, and you think about the new sort of, I guess, Overton window within the left itself, is now when you start talking about the queer ideology, the blurring of the difference between male and female, right? This outward, wanted, flagrant support of terrorists and anti-American elements, burning American flags on college campuses, this sort of thing. When I say it's hard to know exactly who has control over the left, is it your more quote unquote centrist, old-fashioned liberal Democrat, or is this the current iteration of this kind of a hard line Marxian left as we see it manifesting in present day? Now, the people in power, right? Say, for example, when you look at the riots and things of that nature that occurred as a result of the death of George Floyd and all the other Black criminals who were killed while resisting arrest, right? We know that they use this, right? These politicians, these Democrat Party politicians, they use this to their advantage, right? To sort of scare the American people into voting for them, keeping them in power, or else you're going to have to, deal with the consequences, quite frankly, in the streets. And so, when these people get to be too much, will they effectively be put down, as someone like a Yuri Bismanoff would say, lined up against the wall and shot once they're no longer useful, right? Do these politicians who use the Antifas of the world and to use the Bliggities of, like Blanchard would call, are they in control of them, or are the Bliggities and the fascist communist elements on the streets, are they in control of the main organs of the Democrat Party? I don't know. I'm still watching it as it unfolds to see who has control over who. I don't know who's using who.
I think that Obama's legacy lies in there, in my opinion. I think because he's the one that brought, these radical ideas to the White House. The modern, in modern ways, up front, like right in your face. Yeah. So I think his legacy lies in.
Even Hillary Clinton.
Who wins that fight? But
Hillary,
Nancy, Chuck, they're old.
Yes, I'm saying
the people that are coming up are young and they believe this stuff. So it's going to be interesting.
Hillary Clinton, she comes from a line of conservative. Her family were conservative Republican. I forgot the name of one of her political mentors. I know we hear a lot about Saul Alinsky and the effects that he had on Hillary Clinton. But there was I forgot his name. If I looked it up, I could find it. But anyway, Hillary Clinton, she was heavily influenced by a left-wing religious figure, a pastor, as a matter of fact, who really sort of led her as a young lady down that path of radical left-wing politics. But she comes from a conservative family. She broke ranks with her family to become sort of like one of the first major, of course, she would go on to become this figure in American politics. Yeah. But she cut ties and cut ranks with her family because she actually comes from a conservative family, and there was a pastor who radicalized her. I forgot his name. I can give it to you guys if you give me time to look it up. But she was radicalized by a pastor. Right. It wasn't Jeremiah Wright. It was another radical left-wing pastor that radicalized Hillary Clinton. So a lot of these older Democrats, they know better. But like I said, I just don't know who's using who at this point.
Yeah. Blanche, what do you think?
About who controls the Democratic Party?
Yeah, and just how Obama's legacy is going to be tied into that. And
I think that this election, in my opinion, was the Democrats solidifying their new base. They made it very clear of who they want to be on their side, and it's not men who think, it's not conservative-minded people. They want radical people on their side. And so, if you think about everything they've been saying, what they've been saying, if you're not down with the trans agenda, you're not down with climate change, you're not down with all of this stuff, i.e. Kamala, i.e. Obama, i.e. Hillary, i.e. AOC and all the progressives, then we don't want you. And so to me, that you were lying in the sand this past election, and this is what they want. They want more radical. They want people on campuses celebrating Hamas. I mean, this is what they want. And so, how does it affect Obama's legacy? If we look at Obama as he was in college, I think he'd probably be out there supporting Hamas. I mean, if we're honest. I mean, I think this would actually help his legacy.
with a tutu on.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just based on how he was in college, he'd got to be out there, because based on who he was hanging with in college, he'd be on the campus talking about free Palestine from the river to the sea. But
you would.
But yeah, I think the Democrats now are really, I believe, like you said, Quisha, they're getting older, and so it's a new guard that's going to take over, and I think it's going to be the radical progressives, and that's what they want. If you think about it, Black women are now saying, for example, Black folks are saying now they're going to boycott Walmart because they're not going to push the gay stuff on the children with the, in the clothing sections and all that stuff. So you can already see this taking place. And to me, this next 4 years, they're going to radicalize these people in America. I hate you saying that word radicalized, but these next 4 years, I'm going to these social media sites, and everything Trump says or Republicans do, they just posting it. Like, these folks are going to be crazy in 4 years. They're going to be absolutely nuts. They're going to be insane. And I can see it. And so that's what they want, in my opinion. They want crash out dummies.
Yeah. I just wondered, though, if the Democrats can use these crash dummies to further consolidate their power, what will they do with them when they feel as though they're no longer useful? Or maybe they will always be useful. That's the thing, just to always kind of keep them under their thumb, because ultimately, some of these folks, they want a kingdom to rule. They want something to rule over, right? It's like a mafia boss. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to pay a tribute, but, there has to be something going on beneath you in order for you to, reap whatever benefits that come along with being the ruler or the head of something, right? Just let the thing function to the degree that you reap some kind of benefit or some kind of a reward. And so, at what point will, the Democrat leadership say, okay, enough is enough, right? Keep the society dysfunctional enough to where it still remains largely dependent upon the government and whatever, and just, and that is really a huge part of the problem as to why some of these lingering issues never get resolved, because there's very little political currency into doing the types of things that need to be done. And as a result, many politicians, regardless of whatever political party they belong to, would much rather keep the system going so long as it keeps the people happy. And eventually, or they're thinking that by the time the ish finally does hit the fan, I'll be long gone. So it's not my problem. So, and I think that's true, with a lot of them. They know that this is kind of poison that is happening. But, so long as there's a kind of political market for the sort of leadership that will pander, right, and give cover for this kind of nonsense, they'll play the role because, it means wealth and prosperity and notoriety and social currency for them. And eventually, when the society has been demoralized beyond a point where it can actually function, they're hoping that they'll be long gone. So this is the kind of selfishness of man, I guess, right? That, you know.
So the question is about who controls the DNC. Is that the
Yeah,
question?
no, I think I'm trying to remember what even made me sort of no, that was the question, because Quisha said that she doesn't believe that Joe Biden, well, Quisha, you can speak for yourself, but Quisha said that she doesn't believe that people like Joe Biden are actually these radicals, right? That, you know, that they actually know better. They just do this in order to
I'd
stay
agree.
in power, to
I
stay
agree
in
with that.
power. Yeah.
I
And
agree
so
with
that later on kind of made me ask the question of, you know, when you look at this from the outside looking in, just looking at the whole of the left, and you say, well, you know, you look at someone like Joe Biden, for example, right? I mean, we know how he got in the White House, but let's just pretend for a second, right, that everything was above board. Well, you know, the people who actually go out, you know, and do the protesting, or whether it's on college campuses or whether it's on American streets, the ones that, you know, we see the viral clips and, you know, these kinds of things online all day, every day. Those are the people, that's the Democrat Party. That's a huge part of the Democrat Party base, right? The folks that'll get out there and spit in your face, and people that'll go out there and, you know, yell at a street preacher for trying to spread the gospel right in front of a Planned Parenthood, or anywhere for that matter. You know, these are the people that'll go out there and attack you for, you know, stuff like that, or, you know, wearing a MAGA hat, whatever the case may be, right? This is the Democrat Party base. And so that became, you know, my question. Are the Joe Biden types in the Democrat Party, are they simply using those people to continue to gain and to maintain power? Or are the rabble in the street using the politicians who give them cover? Are they using them to gain power, to get to kind of gain the kind of mechanisms over the, you know, the gain the reins or control over these various institutions?
I think it's
Who's
a mutual
using who?
benefit. I think it's a mutual benefit. I think they're using each other, and I think I mean, would you agree with that, or
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see that. I definitely see them using one another, right? Like here and now. But in my mind, I'm thinking like, is it going to reach, right, some sort of a breaking point? And that's why I even brought up, you know, Yuri Bezmenov. Of course, I remember. I think it was in the G. Edward Griffith interview where he says that, you know, these people, like, you know, you had the brown shirts, the black shirts, the red shirts back in the, you know, in Italy and Russia and Germany. And it's like, you know, they're causing, you know, they're helping the state, right, kind of impose this totalitarian dictatorship, but they're using the kind of militia wing of the state to kind of get the people in line. And like Yuri said, that once these people are no longer useful, they will be lined up against a wall and shot. Will the likes of the BLM leadership, for example, figuratively speaking, be lined up, or literally for that matter, be lined up against a wall and shot, while, you know, Joe Biden and Clinton, right, pass on the reins of political control to their heirs?
Well,
you know,
the thing is, when it comes to, and I'll attempt very briefly before we move on to try to take a stab at both of those questions. A, who controls the DNC, and B, when it comes to your more radical contingent of the left wing, are these folks being used, or are they using the more what they would call neocon or neoliberals to push their own agenda? When it comes to who controls the DNC, the fact is, I do believe that Obama has sway in terms of political maneuvering. However, I believe that Obama is beholden to powers that be that are not exactly tied to any one country, but who have more of a global agenda and a global presence. And there's a lot of moving and shaking that's going on a global scale that is not even national in scope, if that makes sense. So it's these powers that folks like Obama and Biden and others are carrying the water for. However, they are given, the Obamas of the world are given so much discretion to be able to make kind of political moves and so on. And I think Obama had influence over Biden being the 2020 nominee and Kamala being the 2024 nominee, as well as Hillary Clinton being the 2016 nominee, because it meant the preservation of his own legacy, preservation of Obama-esque policies. And you saw the rhetoric, of course, in the montage. So I don't think Obama has any real power and control, as it were, but I think he has enough power and control to be dangerous. When it comes to this kind of infighting that goes on the left wing of the spectrum, you have your more radical intellectuals, like your Michael Eric Dysons, like the folks over at the Young Turks, like FD Signifier, who often refer to people like Obama and Hillary Clinton and Biden as neoliberals. And their take on neoliberalism, as you saw in the montage, is kind of conservative light, where they don't mind, the free market enterprise kind of structure where persons are able to pursue entrepreneurship and property ownership, such to where they're pursuing self-interests at the expense of poor people and people who don't have equal ambition, and people who aren't cut from the same cloth, as it were. They envision a society where everybody's equal, where nobody's hungry, where nobody, where property rights aren't even a thing. And so in their mind, people like Biden and Hillary and Obama are not radical enough. And so they kind of presume or assume this posture of being, of having it all figured out. And if only we did this and that and the other, we'd be better off as a society. We would be more of a utopia. And I would argue that it's not as if they are on a different team than the Obama types. I would argue that they are on the same team. They're just more impatient than the Obamas of the world. And so it's really a degree of patience and impatience more than it is having two opposed ideologies or doctrines.
Yeah.
The fact is, when it comes to this kind of quest toward globalism, what the Obama types understand is that you can't do it all quickly in one fell swoop, because to the extent that you do that, you'll have pushback that's hard to battle. But then once you get your utopia, it's hard to sustain, because you have a large segment of the population who are upset that their world has been drastically changed. And so you need to gradually and incrementally prime people and maneuver things in such a way that 100 years from now, you are more closer to the world that the FD signifiers and others envision. And so really it's a matter of strategy that they're arguing about, not so much you are not radical enough. No, it's some of these folks are patient, some of them are impatient on the quest for the thing that they all want.
I agree. Yep. Perfect. Strategy, patience, right? And it's funny because that's what a lot of the the people who came out for Obama in 2008, a lot of these former members of the Students for a Democratic Society, members of the Weather Underground, a man named Mark Rudd, who he actually left the Weatherman. He was a Weatherman, one of the most prominent members. He left the Weatherman in 1977, I think, and turned himself into the authorities because he was just tired of living a life on the run. And I don't even think Mark Rudd ever did a day in jail for the bombings and terror attacks that he admitted to being a part of. He actually wrote a memoir. It's called Underground: My Life in the SDS and the Weatherman. And Mark Rudd said of Barack Obama, I have just some of my notes here just queued up. I'll just read to you guys just to piggyback off what Chad said. Here's what Mark Rudd said of Obama. You have to remember, Mark Rudd was, he was a radical beyond. It's hard to really put into words the collective psyche and mentality of the Weathermen. They were just complete and utter psychos. There's no other way to frame it. And oh, too, Mark Rudd, like many other 70s radicals and domestic terrorists, in his case, of course, went on to pursue a field in education. He actually became a professor, if you could believe that. But here's Mark Rudd and I know you do believe it. And here's what Mark Rudd said of Obama. He said Obama is this is a quote. Mark Rudd says Obama is a very strategic thinker. He knew precisely what it would take to get elected, and he didn't blow it. But he also knew that what he said had to basically play to the center to not be overrun by the press, the Republicans, scare centrists, and crossover voters. He made it. And I agree with this strategy. Any other strategy invites sure defeat. It would be stupid to do otherwise in this environment. So even the guys who were willing to, blow up, police stations and attack military veterans returning home from Vietnam, he knew by 2008 that, that way was not going to work. You had to play the long game, which is why, and he knew, or he believed, that Obama was in fact a fellow traveler, that he was in fact a radical, but he was the right kind of radical because, pretty much no one would see him coming. And, Mark Rudd was pretty prophetic when he said those words.
Got anything, Blanche?
Oh no.
All right, let's get to these supers before we move on with the show. Let's see here. You want to read them, Blanche?
All right. Oh, really? Can't stay long. Biden pardon Hunter tonight.
Yeah, he sure did.
Yeah, I'm not shocked.
Yeah, he sure did. He said he wasn't going to. And I remember on this show we were talking about
we were actually talking about a Trump pardoning, but I knew something was going to happen. Yeah,
that's what we were talking about, and I think talks were going around, murmurings were going around. Well, it's possible that since Biden said he's not going to pardon Hunter, that Trump would get in and he would pardon Hunter if Biden pardons Trump for his legal troubles. So, but we all knew this was going to happen. I mean, are any of y'all shocked that Biden?
No, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked.
All right, thank you all. Really, Jesus loves you. God bless the Chad, Blanche, Chad, Chuck, and Quisha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jesus loves you, Martin Towns. I remember voting for Obama, collected all the newspapers the next day. Now I'm thinking about selling them to the commies, to the highest bidder. 200 paper is more valuable to me now. Hindsight. Thank you, Martin Towns. Vic gifted Chad 5 memberships. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you.
Rick Hamstead, Vic gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, Rick. We had this up before, but Menelik stunned to find FDR signed executive order 6102, which made the private ownership of gold coins and bars illegal. Not handing in your gold to the Federal Reserve could land you a decade in prison. Took 40 years to repeal it. It's crazy.
Thank you. Say he did the same. He did the same thing with silver as well.
CARC, thank you for the donation. Cruise Missile, thank you for the donation. Thank you. Ty, Biden is basically a Dixiecrat, old school Democrat. All right, thank you, Ty. Rick Hamstead, another 5 memberships gifted to Chad.
Do y'all agree with that Dixiecrat comment?
I mean,
I don't think I do.
I mean,
I think Biden is in the same fashion as LBJ, a malleable politician who's going to do what he's told.
That's what I said. That's what I said when you were off camera, Chad. I don't know if you could hear what we were saying, but that's the same thing I said. He's a political chameleon. He just kind of, not a man of principle for sure. Some of the old Dixiecrat Democrats were men of principle.
Yeah.
Some of them
Now,
actually,
you could argue
especially
whether they had moral principles or amoral principles. You can make an argument about that,
yeah.
but they were principled. They were idealistic, as it were, in terms
Yeah.
of what it was they believed.
Yeah.
Whereas OBJ, like
Yeah.
a lot of the Dixiecrats were, thought that he betrayed them. So, but yeah.
And if you listen to, just go listen to Joe Biden about 10 years ago, he sounds completely different. Like he's a whole different, he's an entirely different person.
Right.
He made sense back then.
Yeah.
Except for when he tried to railroad Clarence Thomas.
Yeah. And that's what I remember. That's, Biden being, one of Ted Kennedy's right-hand men, and just sitting back and watching, again, what he did to Clarence Thomas, what he did to Justice Robert Bork. That was a huge part of what the 80s represented as well, was this kind of pushback against judicial activism. We had, of course, the then Attorney General under Ronald Reagan, a man by the name of Ed Meese. Ed Meese is considered like a legend within, I guess, conservative jurisprudence, if you want to call it that. But all of from the Robert Bork, the Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, there was this whole tree of conservative legal minds and legal thinkers from that era. And best believe that Joe Biden was one of the Democrats that were front and center, that were trying to keep that element out of of American politics, not just with the Supreme Court, but just various court appointments. They did not want the Republican Party or the Reagan administration to change the face of American law. But Joe Biden was front and center in that, and what he did to Clarence Thomas, of course, is just. I get angry every time I think about it. Even when I see the old clips of those confirmation hearings, it's just seeing Joe Biden there, just sad.
Super sticker from Willie Doc. Thank you, Willie Doc, for the super sticker. Hallelujah. He became a member. Thank you for becoming a member.
Thank you.
Gifted Wax, gifted Chad 10 memberships.
Thank you.
And Ty, do you think they panicked and accelerated the globalist agenda after Trump was elected? I think it was supposed to be slower, so we didn't notice.
Let's see. Do you think they panicked and accelerated the globalist agenda after Trump was elected? I think it was supposed. I think so. But the thing is, to be completely honest with you all, I've gone back and forth over Trump and what to make of him since 2016. There are moments in time from between 2016 and now where I've thought that, well, Trump is, his own man, that he's running, for president so he could basically try to make America a force to be reckoned with again, and he's serious in this pursuit. And there's other times that I think he's a psyop. I think he's controlled opposition just based on some of the decisions that he was making, based on some of the things that he were doing. And so I tend to kind of go back and forth when it comes to Trump. When I look at some of these selections that he's making, though, as of late, I'm kind of back on Trump really is trying to make America a force to be reckoned with again. So I kind of go back and forth, but to specifically to your question about them fast tracking the global agenda, when you look at what the UN has been up to for the past 100 years, when you look at the World Economic Forum, which predates Trump's presidency, his 2016 presidency, they were very vocal about what it was that they were trying to do, what their intentions were. And I think people are now paying attention to what's going on in the World Economic Forum now that you have social media influencers and YouTubers and others who are drawing attention to it. But that information is there for you to view. Like, you can go to YouTube right now, type in World Economic Forum, and they are unashamed in their pursuits. They're unashamed in what they're trying to do, and that predates Trump. So I don't think it's so much that they're trying to fast track it. Yes, in some ways they are trying to fast track it, but I think it's more the case that more attention is being drawn to it, and more people are just know about it now than before Trump ran for office. I think that's what it is. But
I think,
you know,
oh,
and then too, like what you see is as far as wokeness is concerned. I mean, Chuck talks about this extensively. I've heard Quisha talking about it, particularly as it relates to or pertains to critical race theory. That you know this, like as far as academia is concerned, wokeness has been brewing in the institution since the 1970s, and it's manifesting now that you have these people who are in positions of power in the private sector who have been educated under a lot of these philosophies and ideologies in higher education and graduate school, who are pushing this kind of woke ideology that they gleaned in college, in corporate America, sports, so on and so forth. So it's not so much that it's fast tracked. I think it's more the case that it's more widespread now that people have gone through the institutions and are taking what they learned to the streets. So fast tracked, I think it's just a matter of convenience that we see all these things kind of happening all at once.
I think that when it comes to the fast track, or I think that their plan started. I don't even know when it started, but remember they came out with the 2030 thing. I think that was still their plan. I don't
Agenda
think
2030, which they came out with in 2015.
What's that?
They came out with the Agenda 2030 in 2015, and they do this every 15 years.
So my theory is that they didn't fast track anything, but they didn't predict that Trump would. They didn't predict that they would lose the media. I don't think that they predicted that part, and I think that is and the hand of God. These people are godless, so they ain't even think about God. They think that they are in control of everything. So they didn't calculate in God, and they did not calculate the media, which I believe is God's work as well. So that's my little 2 cents.
I mean, I'll say this. These people are very intelligent. They're very forward thinking, and they kind of understand how human beings work. You listen to, some of the people that are involved in all of this, listen to what they say. Their main thing is, we saw this during COVID, is a person not having freedom. So basically, if your freedom interferes with this agenda, then you can't have freedom. And so I believe they predicted the media was going to do what it did. And if you think about what they're doing things that are dealing with your rights as a human being, because they know they're not going to be able to. We're in the information age. You can't compete with information. It's too much out there. So what they're going to do is they're going to start attacking individuals' rights. So they're going to say that if you don't agree with this policy, if you don't abide by this, just think about in 2021, the Biden administration said, Homeland Security said, if you don't agree with COVID measures, you're a domestic terrorist. If you question the election, you're a domestic terrorist. If you celebrate national holidays, you're a domestic terrorist. If you have too many strong
Even an American flag,
domestic terrorists. And so I believe their plans are going to be to stifle our rights, because they know they can't. We've already shown that you can't compete with social media. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what, you can't do this. This is going to be unlawful. This is going to be a federal offense. Like this. So to me, that's what they're trying to do. They're not going to. This kind of stuff is a small topic for them because they spend all day spinning their wheels with their media and having control of all that stuff. If you listen to Noah Yuval Harari, listen to the stuff he says, the way he talks like freedom is a thing of the past. He's talking like we're already in chains somewhere. And so at the end of the day, I just think that these people are going to do this thing strong arm. It's not going to be strong arm like the movies where they start marching tanks down the street, but they're going to slide this stuff in ever so discreetly through virtue signaling, being woke, liberalism, all this. They're going to keep, well, we gotta go. We talked about this last week. Climate change. Climate change is going to be it's going to be a huge deal, because if they can tell you that the climate is trying to destroy you or destroy the planet, then they can take any measure to prevent it. What measure can you not take if they're saying the planet is going to destroy us? That means climate lockdowns. That means carbon footprints. That means you can't use this. It's going to be horrific. And so I think these globalists don't have to speed their plans up. They don't have to rush. It's already in place. They've been doing this stuff for years. I think what it is that people are finally finding out about it. Even if you go back to 2015, what Chad's talking about, you can listen to them talking about a pandemic. You can listen to them talking about how they need a pandemic, what it would do. Like, you can hear them talk like out in the open, like it's nothing. And so I just think that they don't have to fast track anything. It's already the ball's already rolling, and anybody that goes against it, or even seem like they're going against it, is going to be a radical terrorist, domestic terrorist. Think about it. Again, I'm gonna say this again. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made it a point to say that Donald Trump was against climate change. They said that for a reason, because they know there's going to be this big climate push in the media, and Trump's going to be like, this is a hoax. Same thing they did with COVID. He said he ain't taking it serious. It's a hoax. It's going to be the exact same thing times 1,000. This climate change is going to be insane. So they're not speeding anything up. Their ball is rolling, and what's going to stop it is us.
Right.
We got to stop it. There won't be a president. There'll be people saying no.
So here we go right here. 17 goals for people and for the planet. So the world leaders came together in 2015 and made a historic promise to secure the rights and well-being of everyone on a healthy, thriving planet when they adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 substantial development goals. So this is in 2015. Says, I wonder what those 17 goals are.
Look at the first one.
Okay, here we go. Okay, let me go back to the top. Goal 1, no poverty. So they're going to get rid of poverty. Goal 2, zero hunger. Goal 3, good health and well-being. They want to do all this by 2030. Goal 4, quality education. Goal 5, gender equality. Goal 6, clean water and sanitation. Goal 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Goal 10, reduce inequalities. Okay. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. Goal 13, climate action, which Blanchard was just talking about. Goal 14, life below water. I guess they're going to clean the oceans. Goal 15, life on land. And they have all these indigenous looking people on all these little graphic postcards. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And then goal 17, partnership, i.e. globalism. So yeah, I mean, they've been pushing this, and again, every 15 years they release a new agenda and their planks for their goals for the next 15 years. And so yeah, to answer the question, it's not so much that it was fast tracked; it was rather that attention was drawn to this. And I think in the spirit of the question, Trump's being elected in 2016 was one of the things that caused attention to be paid to what was going on globally. So,
but I want to ask you all a question. The first goal is no poverty. So what does that sound like? How are you going to get rid of poverty? Like, I'm just like, how are you going to get rid of poverty globally? How you going to do it?
Like antithetical to the Bible, because the Bible says that the poor will always be with you. So I don't know what they were. It's the same thing. It's like this idea that you can rejigger the universal laws, that God has already put in place. Like, you can't do that. You can't do it.
So here's what they say. They say, why is there so much poverty? Poverty has many dimensions, but its causes include unemployment, social exclusion, and high vulnerability of certain populations to disasters, diseases, and other phenomena which prevent them from being productive. Oh yeah. I noticed that they didn't mention lack of motivation, entitlement, just being this kind of modernity that exists among us, where we have little interest in following the footsteps of strong fathers, and we want instead to just be given the creature comforts of life that is exacerbated by political figures who tell us that we have a right to everything that is made by the hands of men. None of that. It's disasters, diseases, vulnerability. That's the reason. Why should I care about other people's economic situation? They say, there are so many reasons, but in short, because as human beings, our well-being is linked to each other. Growing inequality is detrimental to economic growth. They don't even define what this growing inequality is, but they just say it, and undermine social cohesion, increasing political and social tensions, which is a gaslighting thing to say, right? They're pushing their agenda and thrusting it upon us, and to the extent that we respond to it or react to it or reject it, then they want to say, oh, no, there's growing social tensions. No, we just don't want what it is you're trying to sell. Mm-hmm. In some circumstances, driving inability in conflicts. I mean, okay. So anyway.
Do you guys think that with this opening up of information and there being more people are more actively looking to find truth, they see the lies of the mainstream media and things like that, do you think that those types of agendas are gonna how are they going to have the same hold on people that they've had in the past? Because everything is different now. School is different. People are learning more online. You have just so many things are different with the internet being opened up and people actually venturing out into other places to find facts, because they know that a man can't be a woman and a woman can't be a man, and anybody trying to tell me this, I cannot trust. People, they're like, okay, that's out of the question. So there's more of us who did it. Well, I mean, I have a degree, but I got my degree. I didn't go through the institution as in the traditional way and got radicalized or anything like that. But there's more of us who didn't go, who don't have degrees and aren't radicalized like that than there are of them. How do you think that they're going to be able to pull this off at this point? Because I think the media was their stronghold. So what do they do now?
I'm going to take a stab at your question, and Blanche, don't forget, because you were about to make a point about the poverty police, and I want to hear what you have to say. But to answer your question, Quisha, unfortunately, there are still a lot of children in America and around the world who are being educated in the public schools. And so if you think about that, you have children who are going to school 5 days a week for most of the year for 8 hours a day, and they're getting this indoctrination on a daily basis. And sure, you could argue that, well, education in America, public education in America is decentralized. This is why we have independent school districts. And even though you have state boards of education, the local communities can either reject or accept the curriculum of the state boards of education. Even though that's true, I think that's all kind of formality, hogwash that at the end of the day, a lot of these kids are still learning the same agendas, still learning the same indoctrination, even with the placated decentralization that we're told exists in the public school system, as you know, Quisha, more than any of us on the panel. But the fact is, kids in the public school systems are learning that climate change is a genuine threat. They're learning exactly what that website just showed, which is poverty is caused by inequality and a lack of access, and the fact that white privilege exists and prevents so-called people of color from getting access to wealth, and that there's wealth inequitable wealth distribution. So this is the kind of thing that they're learning in schools, and they're learning this as they come of age and before they become voting age. And I think that indoctrination is being turned up around the world. And so as people come of age and they get access to information, many of us, we have thresholds of like how much wokeness we can actually take whenever we ourselves have to go out into the world, get jobs, and then we look at that first paycheck and say, what? They're taking this, that, and that third out. And the fact that we have bills and the fact that we have our own kids, and we've realized that, oh, they're taxing me when that money could have gone into my pocket. And you better not start a business, because when you start a business, you'll really find out that all of this idealism you were, indoctrinated with in school, it's a fairy tale. I have to go out here and live this real life. And I think that is the part that these globalists are figuring out that they need to, and this is why they're trying to rejigger society, is because the fact is the real world turned you conservative more than more than some book written by some conservative thinker or Fox News or whatever the case may be. The real world will turn you into a conservative. And so it's to that extent that that they're trying to rejigger society and just basically restructure the way everything is done so that the real world doesn't turn you into conservative, right? So, I mean, I was trying to get my way back to your question, but I think I lost it. Anyway, I lost where my train of thought. Sorry about that.
No, that's good. That's good. They are no, that's good. That answers it. They are planning on using the next generation, basically, which I think is always in part of their radicalizing. Like that's what they do. They go for the young. They either try to eliminate the young altogether or go after them. And they're just, instead of it starting in the universities like 12. So no, for me, I think that is what they will continue to do. So I'm asking this so we know as believers, because as they're working, we need to be combating what they're saying, and making sure that we are just keeping that in mind and trying to see,
right,
making sure we're covering those areas where their arrows are pointed at. What were you guys, Blanche, you were going to say something about the poverty and that?
I was just saying it's just the first one was to get rid of poverty. And according to them, most of the world's impoverished. So if most of the world is poor, then what's going to be a solution to end global poverty? They mentioned universal basic income, just giving people a check. They mentioned, obviously, give them a check, and you're going to have to give them food. You have to give them housing, give them somewhere to stay. So basically, who's going to fund the entire planet to be, I guess, dependent on this global government? Where's this money coming from? We saw last week, those two women, the two obese women, talking about the money wasn't enough. They need some more. They need, what they say, 1.5 trillion. They need some more money. And so
3 trillion.
Okay. So they want $3 trillion. And I find that funny because
per year.
Per year?
Yeah, 3 trillion per year from now to 2035.
Okay, so just go to California And just know that California has been spending billions upon billions of dollars a year to end homelessness. I challenge anyone to go to California and tell me, is it working? All that money they spend on homelessness, how is it the more money they spend, the more people are homeless? You know, they're giving homeless people money, they're giving them checks, cell phones,
housing,
place, like they're giving them everything, and it's just more people that are homeless. And so I don't
know.
Housing
too, like brand new condominiums housing.
They're building 3 high-rise in LA right now for the homeless. 3 luxury high-rises for the homeless. Again, my point is, you have to. This got to be by force. Nobody's going to go for this. This has to be by. They're going to have to force their way to do this. When you ask how they're going to do it, by force, because who's going to sit back and exclude California and New York? Who's going to sit back and let these people build high-rise apartment buildings, luxury for homeless folks, and y'all crammed into 4-2 and like it's not going to work. People are going to buck, and so they're going to do it by force. The only way you can end poverty is by force. That means you have to take from people, give people. It's going to be insane.
Remember, too, just an interesting side note. You know, Earth Day. I don't know if y'all heard of Earth Day. Something people celebrate environmental protection or whatever the case. And it's no coincidence, of course, that Earth Day is the same day that Vladimir Lenin was born. So Earth Day is also Lenin's birthday. So like I say all the time, these people are watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside. But I won't add any more to what you guys said. Y'all knocked it out of the park.
Wow. That makes me think about when Blanche says who's going to pay for it. I remembered in the montage this clip where Obama's like, I think this is a clip. Let me play it. Hold on.
FDR, President Roosevelt, realized he would need to form a new partnership with business if we were going to become what he would later call the arsenal of democracy. And as you can imagine, the relationship between the president and business leaders during the course of the Depression had been rocky at times, had grown somewhat fractured by the New Deal. So Roosevelt reached out to businesses, and business leaders answered the call to serve their country.
Okay, that wasn't it, but there was one where he's saying that basically businesses just couldn't be businesses anymore. Like they had run out of things to create and build and do, or something like that. Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'll pull it up for you, Quisha.
Okay.
I'll pull it up. Wait, go ahead. Chuck looked like he was itching to say something.
Nah, this guy, man.
He said a partnership. That wasn't no partnership.
There was no partnership.
Would that be fascism?
Yeah, that's what he did. That's what he did. This is not completely, but yeah, in a sense, because when you mention that, Quisha, I start thinking about the differences between communists and fascists, at least the differences that they claim kind of set their movements and their philosophies at odds with one another. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, you're right. FDR took a small portion. When I say small, of course, we're talking about microscopic in comparison to the amount of people that were just, I guess, out there in the country, just doing the business of producing whatever said thing was. He took it upon himself to gather up the best and most successful in as many American industries as he possibly could, and essentially solicited their advice on how to regulate those industries in order to prevent what he accused of, or what he said was the cause of the Great Depression, which was this kind of supply, or what he called overproduction. The reality was that the producers were overproducing, underpaying their employees, and in the workforce, or the average American, the average citizen could not afford to purchase the things that the, I guess, capitalist class, quote unquote, were producing. So we had this overproduction problem. And so to FDR, in so many words, you know, just like any other run-of-the-mill Marxist, of course, competition was the issue. And so we have to create a situation to where we can increase the wealth and the incomes and the earnings of the average American citizen so that they can then afford the things that are actually being produced. It wasn't so much allowing the market forces to work so that in a kind of competitive atmosphere, right, which is what the free market is hinged upon, the competitive atmosphere, which drives one to figure out an innovative way to lower costs, right, for the benefit of the consumer. It's no, keep the prices high, but let's find a way to, whilst keeping the prices high, increase the amount of monies that the average American had at their disposal to then purchase the things that FDR believed that they couldn't afford, which was the cause of the Great Depression. And so if I, for example, if I'm a steel manufacturer, or if I make windows, right, instead of just allowing all the window manufacturers in the country to just compete with one another and try to figure out a way to bring a cheaper price, bring a product of comparable value and utility to the market at a cheaper price than their competitors. Now, we're not going to do that. We're going to create a certain set of rules for the entire window manufacturing industry. And despite what state you live in, despite the nature of your business, your clientele, et cetera, if you were a window manufacturer, you had to do things FDR's way, according to the advice that was granted to him or given to him by your competitors in that very same market, in that very same industry. So if you worked for a window manufacturer, you went to FDR, and in the name of trying to save the economy, you convinced FDR to come up with a kind of government regulatory leviathan that would advantage your business at the expense of your competitor. And this is what he called creating, fixing the Great Depression and creating economic opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Again, like you mentioned, because this is fascism 101. This is what FDR did when Obama is saying that is what I just explained to you. And I'm leaving, not going into a ton of detail. I'm just trying to give you the outline. That's what Obama is talking about. And that's what FDR did. Because it's just the magic.
The private sector so weakened by this recession. The federal government is the only entity left with the resources to jolt our economy back into life.
Yeah, there you go. The federal government is the only ones left. They're the only ones, everybody. Can't nobody do it but the federal government, okay? Don't you know that? Just give me all the power and I promise I will fix it for you.
By telling people what to do. By telling people what to do. You don't even have the foggiest idea of what to, you know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. It's just, you just say, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to take these so-called resources and take them from here and shift them over here and then problem solved, because these folks over here, they need it more. It has nothing to do with the fact that these people will in turn vote for me, right? That has nothing to do with it, right? I'm going to take from my political opponents and give on to those who are willing to support me politically. Now, that has nothing to do with it. It's about trying to fix the economy. But that's all the federal government could do, is take monies from one area, take property from one person and give it to someone else. And they call that somehow,
it's like what
that's somehow going to fix the economy. And people fall for this. People believe this now still.
But see, it's just like reproductive rights, or a girl is a boy, but like their language is funny. So when he says fix, he don't actually mean like fix as in repair. He means fix as in rig. We're gonna fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're gonna rig it. We're doing that. We're putting in a fix, not fix it as in get it working properly. We're going to rig it, fix it. That's the kind of fix it that they talk about. You gotta watch that funny language.
Give it to people who will vote for me. And unfortunately, the lazy, the shiftless, the the immoral. So yeah.
What do y'all think about this comment from J Bunny 102? Says, I admit I'm still somewhat biased about welfare because let's see here. I'm so biased about welfare because I know with the right person it can be very helpful during a time of trouble, but it's not permanent. It's not a permanent fix all. You got to get up and get moving. I understand your sentiments, J Bunny, but I strongly disagree with you on this one. I believe that there should be no welfare at all from the federal government. I think that it should be zero. I think it should be stop cold turkey, because what it does is it de-incentivizes the private sector, who had already had answers to what you say were the people who are on hard times, the people who genuinely needed it, right? I think that the welfare system has caused more harm than good, significantly more harm than good, specifically because of the mindset that it produces. And that's just the least of it. Again, it's the mindset that it produces. It's the fact that it de-incentivizes the private sector. It creates this notion that, well, the government safety net is there, so I can afford to be reckless in the kind of life that I live, or to be irresponsible. And not only that, it takes away the shame element that helps civilization thrive. A civilization that doesn't have shame is a civilization that's not long for this world. And again, when you look at the fact that the welfare system exists, at the same time that the welfare system increases, America and its willpower declines at the very same time. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't. These aren't unrelated factors. I think it's. I think they're factors that are mutually impacted. So I don't know. What do y'all think about this comment?
So I think that when it's there and that's what you know, it's hard to imagine something, how you would, because when I got divorced and my savings, eventually was gone. I wasn't making enough. I was a stay-at-home wife and mom, so I didn't have like work experience. So I had to literally.
Oh yeah. Real quick. Not to cut you off, but you just reminded me. At the same time that the welfare system increases, divorces increase as well, and so it's a threat to the family structure.
Mm-hmm.
This welfare system. But go on.
And when all the when life starts lifing and you need to make ends meet, I was on government assistance for I don't know, a year, maybe, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. I hated it. I was so embarrassed. Y'all should have seen me at the grocery store. I was like, does anybody see I hated it. I hated it. But here's what I'm going to say. So I think that because it's there and it is something that, it's something that has been around my entire life, you can't really imagine life without it. And so when Chad says what he says, that it shouldn't be there, it sounds harsh, but but you have to know that there were other ways. There were other ways to do it. The bright EBT card, right? It's like the light is on it when you pull it out of your wallet. But I think if you can imagine and you can see a world without it, and that there will be other ways to provide opportunities and things like that, then you will be okay. And so you don't have to be biased because it's something that is here, but it's not something that we actually need. It isn't. Yeah. It's not something that we actually need, because we are made in the image of God. We will create. We will find a way. excuse me, that's how human beings are made. We will find a way. We just, this crutch, you know, for those few that weren't able to find a way or blew an opportunity or whatever. Those were instances where God was, he uses these instances to build us up. And instead, the world is coming in, the government is coming in, and it's actually robbing you of what is needed to put in you to get you to the next level. So that's my 2 cents on that.
The existence of a welfare system is part of an agenda to fashion a society for the unprincipled, amoral, lazy kind of man. That's what that is. The question is always, what kind of society will we have? To whom should our society cater to? Our society should cater to the individual who is upright, who takes care of his family, takes care of his affairs, the woman who is virtuous. But when you look at the fact that over the past 100 years, with the emergence of the welfare state, with the emergence of the feminist system, which incentivizes divorce, incentivizes sluts, incentivizes abortion, incentivizes all the things, they're fashioning a society that is catering to the degenerate more so than to, it doesn't incentivize uprightness. And so for all of the policies that these liberals are pushing, that these leftists are pushing, they're trying to fashion a world that caters more to the lowest common denominator of our society and not the highest.
So Pamela asked, what about a person who's disabled? I have a special needs child.
They can get hired too.
Huh?
I said they can work and get hired too.
I know people with mental issues who have jobs right now and who have families and churches and communities that surround them and help them. This exists in the private sector. Go ahead.
Let me add something. Let me add this wrinkle. And you two, I of course concur with 100%. But here's just an extra wrinkle, because I get where Jay Bunny is coming from. And this is the kind of stuff that, you'll hear from perhaps even some conservatives, certainly those quote unquote bleeding heart liberal types, and even you're just outright nefarious types, like say like a Cloward and Piven. But listen to what Jay Bunny says. They say, I admit I'm still somewhat biased about welfare because I know with the right person, it can be very helpful during a time of trouble. They say, I know. You know. So therefore, you take it upon yourself to be charitable, if in fact the Spirit moves you to do so, because you know who is best deserving of welfare, not the federal government. And therein lies the difference. I'll go back to something, FDR. When FDR, even though throughout his presidency, since we're on this FDR train, I'll just keep going back to him because I know so much about the man. When he would brag about these phony unemployment numbers, he had unemployment rates over 20% in his worst years. But he would brag about the jobs that he would create, but what he would do was, of course, that he would create these federal jobs by using the monies that he confiscated from the private sector. So he's bragging about jobs being created by him, in essence, when in fact, who is to say what could have been done with those monies had they been left in the hands of the private sector or individual citizens to create certain markets that would have went on to create jobs. It's no. FDR wants to brag about the jobs that he created, the ones that he made, quote unquote. But who's to say, again, what could have been done with those resources had they been left where they belonged or left elsewhere? Again, taking one thing and moving it somewhere else. People would often chastise FDR, even those in the Democrat Party. Say, for example, someone like Senator Bork of Oklahoma at the time, who was vehemently opposed. He was a Democrat, vehemently opposed to what FDR was doing. And, FDR kneecapped him politically, and he was ousted from power, Senator Borg. But many Democrats, not just Senator Borg of Oklahoma, but many Democrats were saying that you can't do this, because what you're doing is with this welfare system, this Bismarckian style welfare system, is you're taking away what was once understood by the framers of our system, by the framers of the Constitution, to be the responsibility of what we talked about last week, Chad, Blanchard, and Jericho Green, when we talked about the private sector and how the private sector should play, probably should have an exclusive responsibility on alleviating these things. But to the point of FDR's critics, he says that the people locally in the community, they are best suited to handle and to take care of those who are less fortunate, because they actually know, due to their legitimate literal spatial connection in many instances to those who are actually in need, they know what's best for them, and they know best how to allocate those resources, not the federal government, because the federal government is so far removed from real individual people that you can't make the assessment, you can't make the proper judgment call to determine who actually fell on hard times, who only needs it for maybe a short amount of time and will immediately turn their circumstances around because they are someone of strong character and fortitude. The federal government doesn't know that. The federal government sees, of course, advantage in this kind of welfare patronage. And that's the issue. It's not so much that people that are actually in need, it's that what is the proper role of the federal government? And the reality is that the federal government is not suited to do what Jay Bunny is. I'm not saying that this person is insisting that the federal government should do this. But it looks like from their comment, they're saying they're a bit torn about this. So they just kind of want to joust around this idea, play around with this idea. But again, we see now the status that the status that we are in economically, because of this structure of unfunded liabilities. Right, this massive welfare industrial complex has pretty much driven our country off of a financial cliff, because people are taking advantage of the system. People who don't actually need it. Right, I'm from the hood. I know folks out here slinging EBT cards and bridge card points and saying, man, I got $100 worth of money's on my EBT card, bro. I'll let you get $100 worth of groceries, dog, if you just give me $50, because they want to take that money and go and purchase something else with it because they eating fine. But yet and still the government is just shelling out money because they know that, once again, it is a quick fix. It is a way that they remain in power, is a way that they maintain their status and influence by giving away these freebies. The issue is not whether someone actually needs assistance. I think the bigger question is who should actually be responsible for that. And that's where the family comes in. That's where the local church comes in. That's where the community comes in. But of course, as the federal largesse, as the government grows and grows and grows, and it promotes this kind of callousness toward one another, this informality where the people say to themselves, no, I'm good. I'm straight. I don't even want to do that. It ruins the virtue and the spirit of charity, because what I would do with my money to help someone who I felt as though they actually needed is being taken from me. So they've robbed me of the opportunity to be charitable, and also robbed the receiver, the beneficiary of any kind of charitable act, to then see the best of their fellow man in action, thus restoring their faith in their fellow man, and perhaps causing them to look inward and the possibility of one day becoming a better person. And so again, who knows what we could do, because we know people who need charity. What we could do to actually help the less fortunate is now in the hands of government, because they know better than we do what to do with our money in so many ways, including they know better than us who actually needs charity.
And just to add to that, and I think it it doesn't allow you that connection to
Yeah, you know,
your
yeah,
community.
that's right.
That you would, have. Now you've created memories. Now you can give back to that person when when you get on your feet, and all the things. It creates a bond between you and and your neighbor or your church, or your mom, your parent, whatever, whomever helps you. So that's one thing. And then it also robs you of the ability to connect with your creator, God, your provider, your Abba Father, the one who gave you life, who said, there is no good thing that I will withhold from you. That if I'm going to give to the birds and the sparrow, of course I'm going to take care of you. And so we don't even give God the opportunity to be our good father, to be the good father that he is. And so we're like, oh no, we'll rather take a cheap knockoff. And I'm not, no shit. No, this is not to Jay Bunny. This is I'm ministering to myself. Like, you didn't even give God the opportunity to be a father, to take care of you, like his word says he will. So there's so many things in that's happening when we don't allow ourselves to go through that pruning process, to go through those hard times. It sucks. I ain't gonna hold you. It's uncomfortable ain't even the word. It's rough. It's tough. But sometimes it is necessary. It is the very things that struggle, that being at the bottom, getting it out the mud, as we say. Sometimes that is the very thing that takes you to and says, you can sustain where you are in that next level. So I think it is one of the most detrimental things that we have implemented. This is the last thing I want to say about this. I think this is why God he's always talking about being careful who we come in, like being yoked up with other cultures. When you start to have other people's ideas into this is our culture. The American culture is a Christian, Judeo-Christian way of life that we've built, or it used to be at least. But when we started to expand and bring in all these other ideas that didn't go along with the culture that we had created, it's messing up what we got going on. And so now we've invited these other ideas. Now look at us down the road. It's a whole hot mess because we didn't understand why things were set up the way they were set up in the first place. We just said, oh, we see some people over there, they don't have enough. Let's give it to them, instead of, wait a minute, this is not the way our system was set up to take care of the people. That's not how this thing was supposed to work. And so when we move away from those things that kept us, now we have destruction down the road.
And sorry, go ahead, Blanche.
And if you think about it, we saw two instances where the federal government intervened with quote unquote helping the people, and it didn't turn out well. In 2021, was it 2020? The federal government said, we're going to go ahead and give you all a certain amount of money each week for quote unquote employment. And folks that actually were working and had jobs didn't want to work anymore because they were getting unemployment and they were getting money from the federal government. So people was making more money from the government than they were in their own profession. And so it actually de-incentivized people to work, and it actually hurt the workforce. Another example of, and then with the immigrants, the illegal immigrants coming over here, same thing. The government giving them food stamps, housing, money. What was the end result of it? What did the immigrants take all that money and resources and say, thank you, we're going to respect America, we're going to become citizens? No, none of that happened. And so the problem is that charity from a social standpoint is of Satan. Charity from God's standpoint is Christ-like. And I say that because when a person helps another person, usually, more than likely, the guise is under the faith. Usually, it's a faith-based initiative and why they're doing it. So not only do you actually help the person's needs, but you also hopefully transform the person by giving them the good news of the gospel. The problem with the government is going to do something that's a one size fits all, but they're never going to factor in human nature. So again, when you give people stuff they didn't earn, they usually have the same reaction. They become lazy, they become de-incentivized. And so even growing up, most of the people that you find that were struggling on welfare had another addiction. They either were addicted to drugs or spending too much. The average person that was on welfare, food stamps, they had enough to survive on. But guess what? That enough to survive on, you had generations of people on welfare, generations of folks living in the projects. You had generations of this because, again, why would I go out there and work when I get money for each child I have? I get a place to stay. I get Section 8. Like, what's the incentive to work? If I can get the American dream, I mean, I can get the car, the house, everything that you have without going to college, without working, then why would I do it? And so, again, I just think that there's no transformation when the government is just handing out money. And like Chad said, the end result is you have the people dependent on the government. So now government dependency becomes a demand. Not the government is helping me for a period of time I need help. It becomes demand. Now, think about this last election. Everybody's asking, what is the government going to do for me? What is Kamala Harris going to do for me? What is Trump going to do for me? So even when we look at in politics, it's still a welfare recipient mindset. We're still looking for a handout and not just saying, I want to be free to enjoy the fruits of America.
Let's
Hey, forget to somebody got to pay for all this. It ain't free.
right,
It's not
right.
free.
Let's play this last clip and then we'll react to some supers and then close out the show.
You have to recognize that a global superpower like the US has the influence, has the reach, the resources, and it produces quite a number of significant role players. Obama being the first black president in the US, it's quite significant at the time when the demon of racism seemed to be rising, when issues of ethno-nationalism seem to be up now, especially under the pressure of immigration.
We're speaking about a legacy today, and his predecessor, the person coming after him, is undoing his legacy back home. What are your thoughts about the political situation in the United States in terms of Barack Obama's legacy?
Superpowers have risen and fallen. Empires have risen and fallen. The isolationism that you are seeing now under President Donald Trump may actually lead to the decline and the ultimate isolation of the US. And the populism in the politics of today, not only in the US but across the world, is one of the most dangerous things, because we saw that in the 30s, it produced Nazism.
Who wants to go first?
I would say, just to follow up on that, the God being a provider. There are so many scriptures. I just looked it up real quick about God being a provider. 1 Timothy 6:17, God provides us with everything we need. Philippians 4:19, God will supply all of our needs. God promises. Matthew 6:31, God promises to provide for our needs. Psalms 145, God promises for food for all living things, including humans. Luke 12, God will not allow us to go without. Deuteronomy, God has provided for us for 40 years. Acts 14, God provides rain from heaven and fruitful seasons. Psalms, God gives food to the hungry. God wants to be your provider. That's all I gotta say. And he's a jealous guy. He don't like when you be like side piecing with the government. Don't do that. Don't let the government be your side piece, okay?
No side pieces.
No side pieces. I don't know what that African man said.
So I guess to promote this idea that nations should remain sovereign, right? Onto themselves, that we should have a respect for national sovereignty. It doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge the fact that we do sort of live in this international community where, of course, you're going to have separate sovereign nations cooperating with one another. If they have some sort of mutual interest in something or another, whether it be they're allied against an enemy nation, and nations are set apart against one another for various reasons and various motivations. The world is far more, of course, more complicated and complex than we can break down here. But I guess to suggest that each individual nation that defines itself on its own terms, if a people in any particular nation wants to maintain that, or in some instances, in the worst case scenario, reclaim that, then that is them wanting to be a quote unquote isolationist, as he puts it. So you either have isolationism, or you have this global neoliberal, neo-Marxist agenda, which hinges, of course, upon stripping the peoples of the right to determine the fate of their own nations. So again, it's just more insulting, condescending language. He takes things and misappropriates them, misconstrues them in order to kind of, spread this propaganda. It's quite fitting. He's sitting there, I guess. It looks like there's some kind of celebration with a Mandela lecture. I've never even heard of this thing. Looks like there's some kind of celebration of a Mandela. Barack Obama, he kind of became like a star on the campus of Occidental in the late 70s, early 80s when he was there, because, he would speak at these anti-apartheid rallies and so on and so forth. And so, just coincidence. But someone, Nelson Mandela, this says, this self-admitted terrorist who was buddy with the likes of Fidel Castro and other the Soviet-backed regimes and dictators down there. And South Africa, Nelson Mandela is not the hero that a lot of people think he is, but I don't want to even go down that rabbit hole. But one thing I like to mention is, before I pass the mic, when he said what he said about this whole thing about the rise of ethno-nationalism, he talks about the 1930s and the rise of Adolf Hitler. I am so sick and tired of the whole concept of nationalism, and again, this attempt to strengthen national sovereignty, the consent of the governed. Essentially, I'm so sick and tired of that being likened to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Germany was a very distinct and specific case, because one cannot overstate the influence that certain German thinkers, particularly George W.F. Hegel, had on German thought, and Germany in its this concept that was bandied about in Germany of the quote unquote Volk. I mentioned this last week, and this is the English translation of the word Volk, is where we get the term folk. Now, in Germany, within the context of the German intelligentsia, and as a result, German politics at the time, was this notion that, of course, that the Volk, or the folk, the people, i.e. the race, was sort of like its own nation, a nation within itself, a nation not defined by a kind of shared praxis or shared value set, but a nation defined solely and strictly on the basis of its race. And so you had a lot of unique circumstances descend upon Germany, from the Weimar Republic to Otto von Bismarck, and then to the election of Adolf Hitler as chancellor in 1933. Germany was a different and a very unique case, given how it defined the Volk, or the folk, the people, and the role of the state in relation to its people, and how the state should go on to serve those people. And then you couple that again with the socialism and the Marxist and the Hegelian influence, in Hitler's movement, and then you get the scapegoating of the Jewish people. And so there's a lot to consider here. But again, when you talk about the United States wanting to push back against globalism, it has nothing to do with any kind of attempt at creating this ethno state, as this guy puts it. It's complete and utterly ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It has nothing at all to do with Germany in the 1930s, what you're seeing in the United States today, or in any other country for that matter, that is pushing back against globalization. That's not what's happening here. But again, it would take me a 2-3 hour lecture to break this down. But he's full of it.
I think people just use that as it's a smear, it's something to easily smear those that they don't like or disagree with. They don't. I don't think that they actually really believe these things. They can't possibly. They just, will say it because they are willing. They are willing to go that low to, this whole idea of when they go low, we go high. Bull crap, Michelle. Yeah. Bull crap. You will get in the gutter with the dirt. You will go so low and so deep. This woman literally got on stage and said, my family thought less of those who were rich. And, I wasn't. I'm sorry, ma'am. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'm just like, these people, they have no problem with saying anything. They don't care. They will say anything that they think will paint you in a bad light if they don't agree with you, to make others not agree with you. They will lie, cheat, steal. They don't care. They have no standards, no morals, no nothing. So, it's just, I think people are starting to see past that, though. I think people are starting to be like, I don't know if Trump is Hitler or a fascist or a Christian nationalist or whatever the popular word is, because they're saying it, they're overdoing it. They ODing, and it ain't working.
Right.
But I'm gonna say this. So really, what it's about is you have Trump is white, and these people, they associate with this global agenda. Again, who's going to go up against the global agenda? White people. So it's easy to say, think about it, even us, they say we're what? We are sellouts.
Like white supremacists.
We're working for white supremacy. So the issue, they don't believe that Trump is Hitler. They just believe he's not going to go for the BS. So they can't push their agenda. So they use these terms, Nazism, Hitler, to make you all afraid. But really what they're saying is, this white person is not going to play ball. He's not a libtard. He's not going to concede to us. He's not going to bend the knee. So we have to make everything around him make him bend the knee with quote unquote, cancel culture. But these folks don't believe that. This is just them saying that white people, again, represent accountability. He ain't said this about these folks in China. He ain't said it about folks in India. It's all kind of corrupt governments in the world that they could point the finger at. But they point the finger at one person, Donald Trump. Not even the government. They're just saying him. So at the end of the day, the reason is because what he represents. As long as there's white people around in the world, there's always going to be a quote unquote threat of what they call Hitler, what they call Nazis, and what they call a nation rising up to identify with the quote unquote white race, to want to have global domination. There's always going to be that threat. So the real goal is to do what? The real goal is to what? Depower white people. So again, he said he's going to isolate America. Think about what he's saying. Isolate America. How? When every country is looking to America, how you going to isolate it? It don't make any sense. Like, it's just dumb, but you just throw it out there to get people in this panic and a frenzy. Say, oh, America's going to be by itself. And if it was, so what? At the end of the day, again, isn't it funny how we've had all these corrupt leaders in the world, but somehow, some way, Trump is the worst. Out of all leaders that we've had on this planet Earth, no one has ever been criticized or scrutinized more than Donald Trump. I'm like, how? We've got people that have murdered millions of people. They don't even get mentioned. Like, how does Donald Trump skip the line on all these folks and he's number one? This is crazy. Like, it's crazy to me. And I'm just seeing all these social media sites. Y'all probably don't see them, but when I tell you they are going on hyperdrive, everything that the Republicans are doing or Trump is doing or somebody said, everything is tying back to Project 2025. Everything.
They're still talking about that?
Man, hold on. But black women have stated they're going to mind their business. Black women have said they're going to mind their business. And black men are saying they're not going to help either. So black folks are saying they're going to sit this one out. And I said, thank God. It's a blessing. Finally, y'all going to sit down.
It's a God.
Finally, y'all going to sit down. Thank you.
Now, you know that ain't true. You know, we love to be up in people's business.
Well, yeah, Blanche be he be in these social media streets. This the lowest, the ghetto, in the trenches, watching, listening to these people, man. I don't see how you do it, bro.
6th, Chuck, it's November 6th. I've been leaving a comment. and one, listen, every comment I left since November the 6th is still getting comment on everything. Listen, I go to my page think I'm shadow banned to the 14th, but I go on my page and people commenting on my post. No, I done been called. So listen, people leaving me paragraphs. I'm just like, listen, ain't no racism. Y'all just pathetic. Listen, they just go.
Good.
You got to be a tether. You got to you hate your mama. You a sellout. These wife, boy, listen, they going in. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too, man. Good.
All right, let's get to the last of these supers. We got one from Greg Bishop. He left us $5. Says, do you consider wokeness a product of critical theory, or did it come in parallel? What was the timeline? Well,
question.
Go
ahead.
I can address it. I don't know if Chad, if you wanted to take a stab at it first, but I wanted to comment on it.
Go ahead.
You want to go? Okay. So yeah, it kind of runs, parallel. The Frankfurt School intellectuals, it became known as the Frankfurt School, but of course it was originally called the Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt, Germany. Is the term Frankfurt School. Of course, they sold themselves as a group of scholars who were interested in trying to figure out, again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, as a matter of fact, why Karl Marx's revolution did not happen as prophesized, as predicted. And the conclusion that they came to, this was the early days of the Frankfurt School. The conclusion that they came to was that people were trapped in a status of what they called false consciousness. And the point and the goal, because of course, in order so as to not make themselves seem as clandestine as they actually were, they said, well, we're just trying to make an objective analysis on the situation. We just want to figure out what actually happened, again, and why it didn't happen as Karl Marx prophesied. And this is the story we are given as to why they were allowed into the American Ivy League. It wasn't so much that these were kind of sympathetic leftists here in the United States. I'm more inclined to believe that. But they sold this idea to the administrators in these various Ivy League institutions, particularly Columbia, that these were not, in fact, these kind of, dyed in the wool Marxists who would come to the United States and try to subvert the country. No, these were just honest men. These were just honest scholars. And so, they came to the United States, and, as they say, the rest is history. But again, the Frankfurt School of Institute for Social Research came up with this concept that human beings across the West were trapped in a state of false consciousness. How do we awaken a more critical conscious? This is when you get the concept of the term of critical theory from the Frankfurt School, who, again, the Frankfurt School, where they were heavily influenced by Antonio Gramsci, as I mentioned earlier, and also another Central European thinker. I can't recall if he was German. He may have been Austrian or Hungarian, but a man by the name of Georg Lukács. Georg Lukács, he was Hungarian. Yes, he was a member of the Hungarian Communist Party. even back in the 1910s and 1920s, I think Georg Lukács was an educator in Hungary, and part of his mode of attack against Hungarian civilization to get Hungary to go Marxist was to promote and introduce the youth to sexual perversion and sexual immorality. Again, this was long before the concept of sexual revolution was even known to the wider public. And so that's where you get this term, this notion of a critical theory. It emerged out of Germany around about, I would say, the 1910s, 1920s. And by the 1930s, it was full steam ahead. But the term, again, when you hear the word conscious, you're automatically you're attributing or associating the word conscious with being awake. It's kind of like a synonym. Well, the term woke sort of became a popular colloquialism in the 1930s. I even mentioned this a time ago on the show with the song that was performed by an old blues singer by the name of Huddie Ledbetter, aka Leadbelly. In 1938, he put out a recording commenting on the trial of the Scottsboro Boys. And the trial of the Scottsboro Boys was a recruitment tool or a recruiting tool for the Communist Party here in the United States to bring a lot of blacks into its ranks. It was so much going on with the Scottsboro Boys trial. I don't even have time to unpack it. But in the song, The Scottsboro Boys by the blues singer Huddie Ledbetter, he uses the term stay awake when you go down there, talking about down in Arkansas, because this case involving the Scottsboro Boys was a group of black boys who were accused of raping two white women on a commuter train after they had a fight with some white males on the train, and the black males won the fight and threw the white kids off the train. But it turns out that the white kids were actually, in fact, trafficking these white female prostitutes who may or may not have exchanged sexual favors for money with the young black boys. Something went awry, a fight occurred, and the story was that black boys raped white women on train. And so the whole term woke, they say, began back in the 1930s, or even some say it occurred even earlier with the Marcus Garvey and the Garveyite movement, because one of Marcus Garvey's favorite or his call to arms was the term, of course, wake up Ethiopia, wake up Africa. This was in the 1920s. And it's hard to even imagine the legacy of black activism in the United States without Marcus Garvey, or especially without someone like W.E.B. Du Bois, who, speaking of, I mentioned the term Volk, the story of, and this is my last point, that W.E.B. Du Bois was tutored in Germany. He went to Germany, learned under, I don't even have time to unpack all of the prominent Germans he learned under. One was a man by the name of Gustav von Schmuller, and there were others. But this is why W.E.B. Du Bois named his first book, his most famous book that was published, 1903, Souls of Black Folk. He called it folk after the German term Volk, to suggest, of course, that blacks in the United States were, in fact, their own separate nation. So this term woke goes all the way back to Garvey in the 1920s. So there's a lot of German philosophy, a lot of Marxists. It's just one big hodgepodge. I'm sorry, I know I'm long-winded. I can't explain it in just one soliloquy. It would take a whole lecture to unpack it. But that's just some of the history of the whole concept and term, or the theory called, we know today as critical theory. That's a brief summary of it, of its origins.
We got 5 pounds from Ty. He says, put it this way: if we elect or get Trump, would we have gotten COVID? Would we have got the summer of love? These all seem like escalations to me.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I guess there was a typo in there. So as far as the summer of love, I mean, the thing is, you would have to first. The thing is, we saw this kind of racial tension brewing under Obama and Trump, or not Trump, Chuck. made this point in the podcast that he did 2 years ago, that you saw these kind of tensions brewing under Obama, and they continued into Trump's presidency because these woke, progressive Marxist types were drawing attention to these one-off situations, these police shootings, these what they call vigilante situations where blacks were quote unquote targeted. They were drawing attention to this with the help of the media so as to get people into the streets. This was going on under Obama with Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown happened under Obama, so on and so forth. And so I think we have to deal with the facts as they are instead of trying to build a narrative or to give causation to certain things, because the timeline defies, I guess, a narrative that you appear to be presenting here. But the fact is, the Trump element, as we alluded to earlier, in terms of not taking the narrative on its face that America's deeply racist and is systemically racist, and look at Michael Brown, look at Trayvon Martin, look at, this, that, and the other, look at these people. These are examples of how deep-seatedly racist America is. I think the fact that Trump rejected that on its face and gave people permission to reject that on its face, in terms of, here you have the president of the United States not buying the Black Lives Matter narrative, not buying the woke narrative in the same fashion as Obama, who built in, who basically played in and played up these narratives. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. The police acted stupidly. Acted stupidly. There you go, Cambridge. So Obama, he basically inflamed this woke agenda, whereas Trump wasn't willing to play ball. And I think that is the appropriate narrative, because it's the truth. I don't think they intensified it or they or they played it up under Trump in the way that they didn't under Obama. I think you see it happening under both regimes, under both presidencies. So another one from Ty, 2 pounds. That's meant to read, if we didn't elect Trump. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, thank you for the super. Really appreciate it. We got one from let's see, Zen by the water. Became a member. Thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you. Appreciate it. J Love, my life hurts every time I listen to this channel, because when we see all the tax cuts and bailouts that are about to happen in the coming years, you all will call it good for business. Are you trolling us?
Yeah. So wait a minute, tax cuts and bailouts.
Right. Anybody who doesn't want a tax cut, okay.
That would be good business.
He means for businesses. He means for big business.
Yeah, it's funny that it's funny how they speak about these inanimate abstractions as if they have actual agency, when in fact that businesses are a collection of people all working towards a common goal. Yeah, please give businesses a tax cut, because I would much rather have that reallocated to me in the form of an increased salary than have it go into the hands of a useless bureaucrat. So thank you.
My life hurts every time I listen. My life hurts every time I listen to this channel, because when we see all the tax cuts and bailouts that will come in the coming years, you all will call it good for business. Yeah, I will call it.
I mean, I don't agree with bailing out. I didn't agree with.
That's why I laugh, Quisha.
Not the bailout piece, not the bailout piece, but the tax cut piece.
Yeah, the tax cut. Like you mix in two different things. Like,
like what you talking about?
So
anyway,
I'm gonna need you to watch the channel a little bit more. but then your life would hurt. So I don't want that.
Y'all gotta forgive them. They own the Shade again. The Shade Room, Hollywood Unlocked, Baller Alert. These channels are just just giving them a snap. They're just saying something to them and they're just running with it. So they're not being explained. They get in the phrase and they take it off. So
they don't ask no questions. They don't look into it. They just said, "Oh, tax cuts, bailouts, go."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yes, I'm going."
Just imagine a constant track meet with the gun going off. Pop, pop. They just run, just sprints all over the place, just running. No rhyme or reason, no order, just sprinting. Just
bow, bow, bow.
They're running the pole vaulter, running into the discus stuff. Like it's just chaos.
Hopping over hurdles.
Yeah, hopping. They're just going crazy, man.
Alethea 846 says, "Outstanding discussion tonight, team. God bless you. Important point you all touched on today and previously is that until people have a biblical worldview, they will be easily swayed by these vain and evil philosophies." 100%.
Amen.
100%. Thank you for the super. Greatly appreciated. And then we got one from Greg Bishop. "Thanks, Chuck. That was very informative." Shout out to Chuck.
I'm proud of him. I almost put Chad to sleep, but I had to get it out.
No, you didn't. You're good.
Chad already had his nap.
I fell asleep. Well, I'm not gonna tell y'all.
What is he called? The nerd rapper on Instagram. Oh my gosh, that is Chad all day long. I said mine is Chad. I think I tagged you in it.
I'm laughing at this guy in the comment section, LL Lewis, talk about we're gonna be 80 still. About it's funny because the topic of tonight's show is literally Obama's legacy. So apropos, of course, we're going to mention Obama a lot. He's the topic of the show. If you go through our entire catalog here on Cutting Through the Culture, I don't think we've dedicated a single show to Obama in 2 seasons. Right. And if you've been watching the entire show, we've mentioned a lot of people tonight, not just Barack Obama. As a matter of fact, just off the top of my head, we may have mentioned FDR more so than we've mentioned Obama tonight. So I don't know, man. Maybe you need to play the show from the beginning instead of jumping in and saying stupid things.
Yeah.
But he is to blame for a lot.
All right, so we'll pass it around.
Ooh, sorry.
What was the question of tonight's show? Is Obama's legacy over? Quisha, we'll start with you.
I think, like I said in the beginning, I think Obama's legacy politically is over for now. I don't think that they don't have anywhere to go right now. But I think the ideology is wounded and having to be pushed back for a bit. But I think while they're pushed back, they're going to try to, scan the landscape, see where they can get in and bring in more young people, try to continue to push lies and propaganda and do the things that they do. And so I think what we have to do, those of us that are on the side of truth and righteousness, we have to make sure that we see what the enemy is doing. And I don't mean the person, I mean the spirit that is working in the person. See what they're doing and make sure that we are minding our post that God has put us here to do. So yeah, we got a lot of work to do as believers. The Bible is very upfront with that. And so that's what I shall be doing. On another note, you guys have a very Merry Christmas. This will be our last episode until the second week of August. So August, good Lord, of January. So I think that's January 12th that we'll be back, if I'm not mistaken. But you guys have a very Merry Christmas. I'm moving, so I am going to very much appreciate this little break. It won't be a real break, but it'll be.
You're staying in Florida?
Yes, we're staying in Jacksonville. We're just getting a bigger place so we can all fit, because right now we can't fit. But I'm gonna miss you guys, and I will see you next year. I love you. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Tonight was a great show. Learned about Obama. Is Obama to blame for everything? No. Is to Chuck's point, is he to blame for a lot? Absolutely, and he's still to blame because he's still out there doing stuff. So he hasn't stopped. Is his legacy has it been diminished a bit? maybe Chad and I talked about this. I think that historically, Trump is a bigger figure than Obama is at this point. Trump is more larger than life than Obama, so I think that his legacy took a hit. He's not going to be seen as impactful. The fact that he was pre-Trump, and then Trump came back and won again, so I think that kind of did push him back. Is he done yet? No. Is the dragon dead? No, it's still breathing. But I'm pretty sure they'll have some tricks up their sleeves for the next 4 years. But it's been a great season, you all. I love y'all. And thank y'all for tuning in. LL Lewis, please, I advise you to go to Teach 'em Chuck's page to learn more about Obama. If you have the time, I know you don't, because you have Obligaty's attention span is about 3 seconds. You probably won't be able to sit through a whole show, but hopefully you can train yourself to stay at least 5 minutes. But yeah, listen, I love y'all, and I'll see y'all, I guess, next year on Cutting Through the Culture.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I dedicated over 7 hours, almost 8 hours to Obama in 3 separate 2.5-hour lectures. So if you're interested, go to my YouTube page and check it out. But I closed the live chat too, because I didn't want to read anything else that gentleman had to say, because I didn't want to be tempted to say something that would keep the show going for another 10-15 minutes, because we got to get out of here. But yeah, man, Obama's legacy, it's just, Obama is, he's one of a kind, of course, he'll always be, America's first Black president, the only white majority country to elect a Black head of state, to run its government, or at least to run run 1/3 of its government. But they'll just plug the next rising star on the left. They'll just simply plug the next person in, and the agenda will continue on. Hence the term, right? I mean, progressivism. I mean, these people believe that society is constantly on a forward trajectory, so long as the people who have the intellectual and moral acumen to as long as they are given free reign, or the ability, the power to guide society along the path that they wish us to go. There'll always be another Obama coming one day, someday. It's just a matter of when. And so, like Quisha alluded to earlier on in the show, the Obama legacy, the Obama era has been slowed down. It's been wounded, and it kind of worked the way in which our political system is meant to work. It kind of swings right along this pendulum from one side to the other, in hopes that we can kind of keep the society as stable as we possibly can, with the expectation, of course, that sometimes you don't always get what you want. But that doesn't work with the left. They don't believe in not being allowed to get what they want for various reasons. We don't have time to unpack it now. But his legacy, is it over? No, but it has been severely halted, and we'll just see over the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, even what takes place. I would love it if we can just put an end to it forever. But we'll see. We'll see. But I'm just glad that the next 4 years, seems as though we have a little bit something to look forward to, with always keeping that skeptical eye on what's going on. I like what Chad said earlier. One moment he's here on Trump, the next moment he's there. But I think in so many words, what Chad is saying is he's looking at things with an honest eye, right? And he's looking at things with a very kind of like an unbiased, attempt at trying to make sure that, he isn't kind of swayed by this kind of cult of personality that some people seem to have surrounding Donald Trump. And so we'll see. But I'm looking forward to the future, and happy to bring in the new year with the President-elect Donald Trump.
Ain't that the truth? So I'll just close it out by saying the following, and we did get one more super, so I'll read that before I leave as well. But information and the way that it disseminates is important, and I think the reason I bring that up is because that will determine what Biden or Obama's so-called legacy will be over the course of the next 100 years. Information is disseminated in two ways, but what I will say before I give you those two ways is that it matters not as much whose face is on a thumbnail of a YouTube video. It matters instead the sources that those YouTube influencers cite to give the things that they say credibility. That is to say that the jobs that matter most are who are the historians, the archivists, the librarians, the curators, the boring jobs that conservatives don't tend to take, but are chock full of those who are left of center. It is their information that lands into the history books. It is their information that news reporters cite whenever they fact check things. That is information that is being looked to, and that is information that's being taught to the up and coming generations. And so you have that kind of information that's being disseminated in secondary, primary education, higher education, graduate school. And then you have the information that's being disseminated on the internet, which is true. Much of it is, a lot of it's not. But it's kind of this competing, these competing, dueling sources of information, as it were. And so while you have mastered the internet, those of you who are on the conservative side of the spectrum, when you look at a lot of the top podcasts that are operated by conservatives, when you look at a lot of the alternative news sources, Blaze, Daily Wire, Breitbart, on and on I can go, Newsmax. Yes, you have mastered the discourse on such platforms like X, but at the same time you have this kind of established ivory tower of information that is being looked to when it comes to what your children are learning in schools. And so long as that persists, that will dictate what children are learning and who they conceive as hero or perceive as heroes and villains in the American framework and the American story. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they are going to sing the praises of Obama well into the future. And so this is why I said earlier in the show that we may have won the battle, but we didn't exactly win the war. And this is why I encourage young folks to take on those boring jobs, to get into those roles, whether it be, if you're gifted intellectually, by all means pursue that doctoral degree, seek those jobs and being professors and librarians and art curators and so on and so forth, so as to bring the light of truth into these institutions that sing the praises of people who deserve it, people who believe truly in the American values, not folks like Obama and FDR who sought to subvert the American identity and to push a globalist Marxist agenda. So with that being said, I will bring everybody up on the screen. We got a super from Stephen Carter. Good show as usual. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And then Rick Hampstead, always a great show and great chat. God loves you all. Thank you, Rick. It wouldn't be a Cutting Through the Culture show if we didn't get our very last super of the year from Rick Hampstead. Thank you. Always coming through. Like Quisha said, we will be back second week of January, although you will still probably see me on a few Sundays between now and then. I'm working on some projects right now. I'm working on one project in particular that I'm anxious to get out by so-called Martin Luther King Day. So yeah, I'll be working on that along with some other things. So anyway, I love you all. It's been great rocking with you all this year. See you next time. God bless.
Season 2.